Good morning, everybody. So as you take your seats, I'd like to welcome you and compliment everybody for being here so early, etc. So thank you very much, and also to thank you for working so well and so hard yesterday. It was a good day. We will shortly start the debate, and just before some house rules. The interpretation regime is, as yesterday, the full language regime, so you can speak and listen to the 24 official languages. So with that, I think we have a quorum, so I think we will start this extremely important debate. Supplementary pensions for savings and investment union. And we have here on my right Marie-Louise Albuquerque, European Commissioner for Financial Services and the Savings and Investments Union, and of course our special guest Alma Saiz Delgado, Minister for Inclusion, Social Security, Migration of Spain, and Damien Boslagar, Member of the European Parliament, who will come in remotely. This is linked to the adoption of the opinion ECHO 695 on the supplementary pensions package. So simply to say in my introduction, as I said, I warmly welcome our guests here this morning. The Commission proposal, part of the Savings and Investments Union, contains changes to the Directive, Institutions for Occupational Pensions, provisions and the regulations Pan-European Personal Pension Product. As somebody heading into that area, I'm very interested in pensions, can I say, as well as a set of recommendations for the Member States on auto-enrolment, pension tracking systems and pension dashboards. The objective, in short, is to reinforce supplementary pensions while mobilising the long-term savings towards investment. The EESC appreciates the active and particularly constructive cooperation with the European Commission and other stakeholders during the preparatory works in a topic that is complex, politically sensible and with diverse views and ambitions. This was evident in the exchanges between our members and DG FISMA in public hearings with the stakeholders from different countries and, of course, in our House discussions. So I look forward to a really good discussion on this subject this morning with all of us. So without further ado, I would like to once again introduce you to our Commissioner, Marie-Louise Albuquerque, European Commissioner for Financial Services and Savings Union. I will now give you the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear President. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Our discussion today is not just about pension frameworks or policy tools. This is about people, about financial security in later life. We are living longer, and this is one of Europe's greatest achievements, but it also brings new responsibilities and challenges. Across Europe, and indeed across the world, we are facing a profound demographic shift. Fewer people are entering the workforce, while more people are retiring and living longer in retirement. This creates a growing imbalance that we cannot ignore. Our public pension systems, the Pillar 1, are and will remain the foundation of our social model. Nothing in our proposal seeks to change that. Pay-as-you-go systems rely on a simple balance. Today's workers finance today's retirees. As that balance shifts, pressure inevitably builds. And this is not a distant risk. It's already happening. And it raises a fundamental question for our citizens. Will I be able to maintain my standard of living when I retire? Because this is what is at stake. In my visits across member states, I meet regularly with social partners, both trade unions and employer representatives. What I see is a growing awareness of the challenges we face and the willingness to engage constructively on solutions. Supplementary pensions are part of that discussion. They are a way to help people build additional security over the long term and to support adequate incomes in retirement. This is the spirit behind the Commission's supplementary pensions package. We fully respect Member States' competencies and the central role of social partners. Our objective is to support, to share best practices, and to help create the conditions for solutions that work for citizens. Let me briefly highlight 3 key elements. First, better information. We encourage the setup of national pension tracking systems, giving citizens a clear overview of what they have built up over time and what they can expect when they retire. This is about transparency and about empowering citizens to plan their future with confidence. Linked to a European tracking service, these tools will also allow mobile workers to follow their pension rights across borders. Second, better oversight. We call on Member States to establish pension dashboards for assessing the adequacy of their pension systems. Dashboards provide a tool for policymakers and stakeholders to monitor and analyse pension trends, system sustainability and coverage across different sectors or populations, and act accordingly. Third, broader participation. In Member States without mandatory occupational pension schemes, we recommend introducing auto-enrolment, with appropriate safeguards and in full respect of national systems and the role of social partners. Instead of asking people to take the first step, which many tend to postpone, auto-enrolment ensures that individuals are automatically included in a pension scheme linked to their employer or professional organisation, while always retaining the freedom to opt out. Where properly designed, this has proven effective, especially among younger workers and those on low to middle income. Auto-enrolment is not a financial instrument. It is a tool for broader inclusion. We are also strengthening the framework for both occupational and personal pensions. The Commission has proposed legislative updates on the Pan-European Personal Pension Product Regulation, the PEPP, and the Occupational Pension Schemes Directive. Both proposals aim to facilitate greater participation, transparency, and ensure that supplementary pensions deliver real benefits to individuals while remaining a reliable complement to public pensions. Ladies and gentlemen, adequate retirement income requires a balance. Public pensions must remain a strong foundation, while supplementary pensions provide additional fair support to help citizens maintain their standard of living in retirement. This is not just a European challenge, it's a global one. But our response must be European, rooted in fairness, solidarity and responsibility. Because in the end, this is about trust. Trust that Europeans will have adequate pensions when their time comes, particularly the new generations. And that is our collective responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, really, a great outline of the situation. And I'm now honoured to welcome Elma Saez Delgado, Minister for Inclusion, Social Security and Migration in Spain, for 5 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Señor Presidente, señoras y señores miembros del Comité Económico y Social Europeo, permítanme, en primer lugar, agradecer la invitación a participar en este debate que aborda una cuestión esencial para el presente y para el futuro de la Unión Europea, que es la adecuación y la sostenibilidad de nuestros sistemas de pensiones. Hablar de pensiones en Europa es hablar, en última instancia, de nuestro modelo social, un modelo que constituye uno de los pilares fundamentales de la integración europea y que forma parte de nuestra identidad común. La protección en la vejez no es únicamente una política pública más. Es una expresión concreta del compromiso de nuestras sociedades con la dignidad, con la cohesión social y con la solidaridad intergeneracional. Este compromiso está claramente reflejado en el Pilar Europeo de Derechos Sociales, que reconoce el derecho de todas las personas a unos ingresos adecuados en la vejez. Este principio debe seguir guiando nuestras decisiones en un contexto marcado por importantes transformaciones demográficas, económicas y laborales. Los sistemas públicos de pensiones han sido y siguen siendo el instrumento más eficaz para garantizar ese derecho. Su carácter solidario, redistributivo y basado en el reparto permite no solo prevenir la pobreza en la vejez, sino también corregir desigualdades que se van generando a lo largo de la vida laboral. En particular, desempeñan un papel clave para proteger a quienes han tenido trayectorias profesionales más inestables o ingresos más bajos, entre ellos las mujeres. En este contexto es necesario abordar los retos existentes con una visión amplia de la sostenibilidad. Una sostenibilidad que no puede limitarse al equilibrio financiero, sino que debe integrar también la suficiencia en las prestaciones y la equidad social. Mantener ese equilibrio es sin duda uno de los grandes desafíos de nuestras sociedades, pero también una responsabilidad compartida que define la calidad de nuestro proyecto europeo. Valoramos en este sentido el impulso dado por la Comisión Europea al debate sobre los sistemas complementarios de pensiones en el marco de la Unión del Ahorro y la Inversión. Facilitar su accesibilidad y mejorar su cobertura puede contribuir a reforzar ingresos en la jubilación en determinados contextos. Ahora bien, es importante subrayar con claridad que estos sistemas deben desarrollarse siempre desde una lógica de complementariedad. Los sistemas complementarios pueden y deben desempeñar un papel de refuerzo, pero no pueden sustituir la función central que corresponde a los sistemas públicos. Cuando el equilibrio se desplaza en exceso hacia soluciones de carácter individual, los riesgos se trasladan a las personas. Riesgos derivados de la volatilidad de los mercados financieros, de las interrupciones en las carreras profesionales o riesgos derivados de las desigualdades salariales. Y estos riesgos, como todos sabemos, no afectan a todos por igual. Por ello, cualquier avance en este ámbito debe ser plenamente coherente con el pilar europeo de derechos sociales y con el objetivo de promover una convergencia social al alza entre los Estados miembros. Reforzar la accesibilidad a los sistemas complementarios no puede hacerse en detrimento de la legitimidad, la suficiencia o la centralidad de los sistemas públicos. Al mismo tiempo, existen experiencias en los Estados miembros que muestran vías de avance equilibradas. En el caso de España, se ha impulsado el desarrollo de los planes de pensiones de empleo, con un papel destacado del diálogo social y de la negociación colectiva. Se trata de instrumentos de carácter colectivo con una gobernanza más transparente y costes más reducidos vinculados al empleo. Este enfoque permite ampliar la cobertura complementaria desde una lógica inclusiva sin cuestionar el papel central del sistema público. Al contrario, parten de una premisa clara. El sistema público es la garantía esencial de ingresos en la vejez y los instrumentos complementarios pueden contribuir a reforzarlo. En definitiva, avanzar en la mejora de nuestros sistemas de pensiones exige preservar este equilibrio. Reforzar los sistemas públicos no solo es una cuestión de justicia social, es también una inversión en estabilidad económica y en confianza democrática. Y es además una condición necesaria para que las grandes transiciones que afronta la Unión Europea, la digital y la ecológica, sean socialmente justas y sostenibles. Señoras y señores, defender hoy unos sistemas de pensiones adecuados es defender el modelo social europeo, es garantizar que el proyecto europeo sigue siendo un proyecto que protege, que incluye y que no deja a nadie atrás. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Minister, for a very interesting illustration of the realities facing pensions. Now, I'd like to ask, coming in remotely, a statement by Damien Buslager, a member of the European Parliament, for 5 minutes. Damien, I hope you're coming in remotely. If you are, you have 5 minutes. Okay. Silence.
Okay, can you hear me now? Perfect. So let me start by saying thank you for the invitation. And I know this debate is not about public pensions, but both the previous speakers have also talked about Pillar 1. And I just want to say that as someone who's maybe not as close to the pension age as the chair, that while I do believe that public pensions Pillar 1 pay-as-you-go systems might mark the backbone of our system, at the moment we do face a pension emergency. And that is because there's an incapacity to reform in many member states. And in my generation, it is currently the case that we are paying both via income as well as via social additional fees basically for the aging population in a way that is not sustainable. And I think that's just important to raise because, I mean, in my member state, for example, 1/4 of the federal budget is currently used to subsidize a pay-as-you-go system, which is supposed to be self-sufficient. And so I think there is a heavy need to reform to create intergenerational fairness also for generations that are still already working, but also that are coming, to ensure that there's also pensions for these generations and that we make this work in a better way. I think, very simply put, 30, 40 years ago, capital-backed pension schemes should have been introduced by the baby boomer generation in order to somehow save Pillar 1. I just want to be quite precise about the situation that we are currently facing, which I do describe as a pension emergency. And in this context, as the rapporteur for the IORPS directive, I think it's important to say that, of course, our interest, in addition to reforming Pillar 1, has to be to ensure that there are supplementary pensions. And here I agree with the previous speakers that there's a lot that we can do to make it more attractive for people to build additional savings for retirement. And occupational pension schemes, for me, are a very good way to do that, because they do allow basically to also not have too much to bother about, if I can say so, as an employee, and to help companies organize that. The Commissioner mentioned 3 priorities for the IORPS directive, and mine are very similar. And we are currently in the drafting of our amendments. Our rapporteurs drafted the European Parliament, which is also why I'm so interested to listen to the debate. I'm currently calling in from Strasbourg, and I very much look forward to your interventions. I've read your report on the matter. Our priorities and our amendments will focus around one, trying to increase the pie, meaning we want to make it attractive for new IORPs to be built up, new occupational pension schemes to establish themselves, in order to bring more people as members into these pension schemes, so that we have more beneficiaries later on benefiting from occupational pension schemes. That's one priority. The second one, the Commissioner also mentioned, which is, you can call it information or transparency. We really believe that it's quite important that we increase the transparency about what kind of pension benefits we can look forward to when we retire, and the tracking system, both for within the nation, but also cross-national, pan-European information, I think is super important, and that's something we want to maintain and strengthen. And third, and I think this is also important, you said this, Chair, in the beginning, we're also working in the context of the Savings and Investment Union, and it is true that also occupational pension schemes can support the innovation capital, the innovation finance, the competitiveness agenda that we have. And that I also deeply believe that beneficiaries and members of the pension schemes will actually benefit if there is more investment into the European economy, and actual productive investments. And we often see in our analysis that occupational pension schemes try to run a very conservative portfolio, which is very good, but maybe also don't run a diversified portfolio, which is actually not that good for the members nor for the economy. And so what we do want to see is if we can increase the, let's say, interest in productive investments, long-term investments, innovation investments in the European Union, also via the occupational pension schemes. These are the 3 priorities. Now I'm very much looking forward to your debate and your interventions to understand your position and learn from it when I write my draft. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And yes, a round of applause there for Damien. Thank you very much. I would now go to the opinion and a presentation by the Rapporteur, Maria del Carmen Barrera Chamorro. She's over here. The floor is yours, as you know, for 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. I will speak Spanish. Permítame, ministra, gracias por estar aquí, miembros del comité. Permítame comenzar recordando el objetivo fundamental que debe guiar todo el paquete legislativo sobre pensiones que hoy analizamos. garantizar que todos los ciudadanos de la Unión Europea puedan jubilarse con dignidad, con seguridad y con unos ingresos adecuados. Es un pilar esencial de nuestra cohesión social, estabilidad económica y de la confianza de la ciudadanía en el proyecto europeo. Y por eso nuestro dictamen es claro: la existencia de pensiones complementarias no puede servir de justificación ni directa ni indirecta para debilitar las pensiones públicas. Defendemos un enfoque global en el dictamen que combina la mejora del mercado laboral para el fortalecimiento de los sistemas públicos con medidas que mejoran la transparencia, la accesibilidad y el funcionamiento de las pensiones complementarias. La gobernanza participativa, la negociación colectiva y el diálogo social son insustituibles para garantizar la legitimidad, la sostenibilidad y la eficacia de cualquier reforma de pensiones. En relación con las reformas de la directiva y del reglamento, decimos en el dictamen que deben mantener un principio de flexibilidad para respetar las competencias nacionales y los modelos de pensiones establecidos por los Estados miembros. Ahora bien, esta flexibilidad no debe confundirse con falta de claridad. Por eso recomendamos avanzar hacia una mayor claridad jurídica. Necesitamos reducir la fragmentación, aumentar la comparabilidad y reforzar la transparencia para generar confianza entre las personas partícipes. Pero además hay que hacerlo sin imponer cargas administrativas excesivas ni afectar negativamente a las pensiones de las personas trabajadoras. También proponemos, en relación con el producto paneuropeo de pensiones, defendemos que deben seguir siendo productos estrictamente individuales. No debe permitirse su adquisición colectiva, pues pueden colisionar con los fondos de pensiones de empleo. Y decimos en el dictamen que hay que preservar la especificidad de los fondos de pensiones de empleo, que gestionan activos colectivos en el marco del diálogo social y la negociación colectiva. Además, proponemos reforzar la protección de los ahorradores cuando decimos que la suscripción de esos productos debe realizarse siempre con asesoramiento adecuado. Permítanme detenerme en un punto crucial. La brecha de género en los sistemas complementarios de pensiones alcanza hasta el 40%. Por eso es imprescindible que la directiva incluya un precepto para que los Estados miembros estudien medidas concretas destinadas a reducir esta brecha, así también como los posibles efectos de segregación por la expansión de los sistemas privados, a través, por supuesto, del diálogo social con los agentes sociales. El dictamen también respalda el objetivo de armonizar los objetivos de los planes privados con la unión del ahorro y la inversión, pero para lograrlo es imprescindible reforzar la confianza ciudadana en los sistemas privados. Proponemos medidas para que los ahorros estén protegidos y gestionados con responsabilidad. Y también recomendamos reformular el principio de persona prudente para encontrar un equilibrio adecuado entre el riesgo de inversión y la garantía de las aportaciones. Y sobre la afiliación automática defendemos que cualquier iniciativa en este sentido debe ser el resultado del refuerzo del diálogo social y la negociación colectiva. Los agentes sociales deben decidir sobre la adscripción automática con un amplio consenso social para garantizar la legitimidad y sostenibilidad de esta reforma. Y para evitar que las reformas se vuelvan a presentar sin una evaluación de impacto y sin un enfoque transversal, proponemos la creación de un comité de seguimiento con gobernanza social para evaluar el impacto de las medidas en la adecuación y sostenibilidad y analizar los impactos del desarrollo de unos regímenes de pensiones sobre otros. Concluyo. Para mantener una Europa como espacio de justicia social, debemos garantizar que cada persona pueda mirar al futuro con confianza. Y eso exige que al final de la vida laboral cada ciudadano y ciudadana pueda contar con una pensión digna, segura y adecuada. Y ese es el compromiso que hemos asumido en nuestro dictamen del CESE. Muchísimas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much, Maria, for that presentation. And again, well done on the work you have put into this opinion. It's absolutely fantastic. So we now go for a general debate with you as members, and we will start with Mr. Robbins, who is sitting at 287. Your floor is yours for 1 minute.
Thank you, President. As several speakers said, pensions are at the same time extremely important for individuals and households at all stages of adult life, and a major issue for both public finances as well as for the supply of private capital to the economy. Across Europe, very different balances have developed between social security schemes, workplace pensions, and individual long-term schemes ranging from investment to protection. 3 pillars, each with specific responsibilities embedded in local cultures. The opinion addresses this point even beyond the scope of the current package, which aims to integrate supplementary pensions into strategic savings and investment union. I would like to thank our rapporteur for accepting many contributions and our colleague Maria Mincheva, who added value to this text. It reflects best practices in a number of member states and tends to build upon these achievements, not to disrupt them. I would like to thank the Commission for asking this committee to come up with an opinion on financial awareness and capacity, which we will develop during the summer months. To conclude, we encourage the legislators to improve the opportunities for long-term savings, to tap the potential of financial markets, and so support our economy as well as our citizens.
Thank you very much. Again, reminding you it's 1 minute, and I would like to, sitting at 73, Dominique Bijon. The floor is yours for 1 minute, please.
Yes, so all panelists have talked about demographic challenges. I want to question the thesis that the Commission's package is an adequate response for the demographic challenges we face. If you look at the political justification of the supplementary occupational pension package, the primary aim of the European Commission's package is to foster a growth-oriented pension and investment fund industry, to allow for a more diversified asset mix for fund managers, and to overcome fragmentation by consolidating the investment fund industry. Overall, the primary aim really is to deepen the savings and investment union and to make use of the savings of workers and consumers in order to increase capital for investments. While these are all valid political objectives, the problem is that with this legislative package, the Commission is interfering in a highly sensitive policy field, namely pension policy, that in addition to this is regulated very differently from member state to member states, and very often social partners have a central role to play. From our perspective, and this has been underlined already by the Minister and by Marie-Carmen, any political intervention in the field of pension policy must always have the primary objective of providing adequate income in old age and to find a financial architecture of pension policy that distributes the financial burden equally. The Commission proposal unfortunately ignores the social dimension and the distributional consequences of its package. There has been no impact assessment on the distributional and social consequences of the package, and DG EMPL has only marginally been involved in drafting the legislation. While we agree that there is scope to enhance occupational pension systems in the EU, we at the same time underline in our opinion that there cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach in this highly sensitive policy field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominique. I'd now like to go to Christoph Pater, again sitting at 248. Your floor is yours, Christoph, for 1 minute.
Good morning. I have worked on pension systems for over 30 years. I invented the concept of the funded pillars of the Polish pension system and then oversaw it as Minister for Social Policy. Talking about Commission's initiative, I would like to emphasize that. It's good that various financial sources of pensions are being proposed, as the principle of security through diversity is close to my heart. But it's important to remember that any pension investments must be accompanied by an appropriate level of education and investment security. Pay-as-you-go systems are and will remain the fundamental pillar of pension systems in many member states. Reforms implemented in the member states since the end of the 20th century have, for many different reasons, maintained or even deepened the pension gap between women and men. And this is, in my opinion, the most important challenge to be quickly addressed by decision makers across the EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now go to, sitting at 281, Sebastian Ries. The floor is yours for 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Net pension replacement rates in Europe average only around 60%, leaving a significant income gap in retirement. one that many citizens, especially younger generations, still underestimate. At the same time, pay-as-you-go pension systems are under growing pressure from aging populations, slower growth and constrained public finances. What is clear, supplementary pensions are not a substitute for public systems, but they are a necessary complement. They diversify retirement income and strengthen the long-term financial health of future pensioners. I therefore welcome, Madam Commissioner, your proposals on PEPP, IORP and on pension tracking systems because they address the right challenges. In the opinion we adopt today, we also call for measures to strengthen public trust in private pension systems and for placing them on an equal footing with public schemes, a crucial step towards closing the retirement gap. This requires greater transparency, better performance and more attractive conditions for providers, because only then can the younger generations look to retirement with confidence and not uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I go to Javier Dozora, sitting at 124. The floor is yours, Javier.
Gracias. ¿Cuál es la esencia de la posición del sindicalismo europeo? Las reformas en los sistemas complementarios no deben debilitar los sistemas públicos. Hay que fortalecer la sostenibilidad financiera de los sistemas públicos y las reformas deben de hacerse a través del diálogo social y la negociación colectiva. Es lo que dice el dictamen de Carmen Barrera, por eso creo que hay que apoyarlo firmemente. ¿Es eso posible? Sí, es posible. Es lo que está haciendo en los últimos 7 años el Gobierno del que forma parte la ministra Sáenz Delgado. ¿Y cómo, aparte de las medidas anteriores? Ampliando la base de cotización. ¿De qué manera? Por una política migratoria diametralmente opuesta de la que se practica en una mayoría de países europeos por gobiernos de derecha y de extrema derecha y que ha hecho suya la Comisión Europea en su pacto de migraciones. Con la demografía autóctona a la baja y cerrando las fronteras, por supuesto que no habrá sostenibilidad de los sistemas públicos de pensiones.
Thank you very much. And now I go to sitting at 172, Mette Kinberg. The floor is yours for 1 minute, please.
Tak. Jeg taler på dansk. Omkring hver 6. pensionist i EU lever i fattigdom, eller risiko for fattigdom. Det rammer skævt. Op mod 19% af kvinderne mod 13-14% af mændene, og kvinderne får 25% mindre i pension. Personer med handicap er blandt de mest udsatte. Mange har haft svagere tilknytning til arbejdsmarkedet, og dermed begrænset adgang til pensionsopsparing. De er mere afhængige af offentlige pensioner. Derfor er pensionspolitik ikke kun økonomisk politik, men også ligestillingspolitik og et spørgsmål om grundlæggende retfærdighed. Vi skal styrke og forbedre pensionssystemerne, men med fuld respekt for de nationale kompetencer og eksisterende modeller. Vi skal ikke ensrette medlemsstaternes systemer, men vi skal sikre, at alle europæere, uanset køn og livsforløb, kan gå på pension med værdighed, sikkerhed og en tilstrækkelig pension, uanset hvilket land de bor i.
Thank you, Mette. And I would now like to go sitting at seat 290. Mr. Roger, the floor is yours for 1 minute.
Thank you, President. Hablaré en castellano. Además de aprovechar la oportunidad que ofrecen las entidades privadas para complementar los planes de pensiones públicos, debemos evitar que el desbocado absentismo se nos coma el presupuesto de la Seguridad Social, tan necesario para todo lo que queremos hacer. Desde el 2018, las incapacidades temporales por causas comunes han crecido más del 100%, con un tiempo de duración que ya es un 75% superior a las contingencias profesionales. El coste para las arcas de la Seguridad Social ha pasado de 7 a 15.000 millones de euros. El coste para las empresas, que incluye pedidos, producciones perdidas, etcétera, etcétera, supera ya los 80.000 millones de euros, afectando la competitividad de las mismas, de la que tanto hablamos, y amenazando, por tanto, el empleo y la recaudación fiscal. Ministra, los agentes sociales ofrecemos nuestra colaboración para, con el diálogo social, encontrar soluciones para reducir este absentismo y así proteger el empleo y la sostenibilidad financiera del sistema. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And I'd now like to go to Zermisa Rusnova, sitting at 294. The floor is yours for 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, dear President. Congratulations for the study group, because the proposed legislative restructuring of the European pension framework requires a sophisticated interrogation of the balance between the market-driven capital accumulation and the essential protection of the European social model. I would emphasize on several important points of our opinion. First, the preservation of the statutory public pure. Then the keeping of the flexibility of the national competences, the central role of the social dialogue in the governance of the schemes, the correcting of the gender pension gap, the critical oversight of the auto-enrollment, the mandate for the multi-stakeholder monitoring committee, the protection of the collective occupational assets, the good balance in the prudent principles, something that is very important, the digitalization and of the portability of the rights, because this is a prerequisite of free movement of workers, and we have to keep that these tracking tools and dashboards must be saved. The financial and the pension education, something that is very important for future generation too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally in this debate we go to Luigi Ugliati, sitting at 346 minutes for you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, President. Le pensioni complementari non devono diventare il pretesto per indebolire o addirittura sostituire il sistema pubblico. I rischi sarebbero nuove disuguaglianze. La vulnerabilità non è solo la vecchiaia o le condizioni di salute, ma anche la non autosufficienza di risorse economiche. Questa vulnerabilità colpisce di più le donne ed in prospettiva colpirà soprattutto i giovani che vedono l'età della pensione lontana, ma soprattutto i sistemi previdenziali pubblici non riescono più a garantire le prestazioni del passato. È fondamentale una corretta informazione sugli strumenti pensionistici integrativi, al fine di esercitare una corretta scelta di accantonamento per il futuro. La pensione integrativa può contribuire in modo efficace ad attenuare le criticità economiche proprio durante la vecchiaia. Ma come si possono influenzare le scelte dei giovani lavoratori? Una soluzione potrebbe essere l'adesione al fondo pensionistico con automatismi, ma è fondamentale gestire la fase di informazione e negoziazione attraverso le organizzazioni sindacali. Grazie.
Thank you very much. And now we go back to responses, and as we do here in the debates always, we go to the last of the initial speakers. We're going remote, therefore I'm asking Mr. Boslager to take the floor as I see him. 2 minutes, please. Sorry. That was my mistake. Sorry, we're not going to you yet. We're going to the rapporteur for a response. My apologies, Barrero.
Bueno, yo quería agradecer. Sí. Quería agradecer todos los comentarios. Quería sobre todo agradecer el trabajo del grupo de estudio, que ha sido excelente, las colaboraciones de Mr. Robin, de Mete y sobre todo el trabajo de la sesión SOC, de su administrador, de Sergio, que ha sido absolutamente increíble. Trabajamos desde diciembre, nos hemos reunido con todos los stakeholders, hemos hecho un dictamen que tiene 46.000 caracteres, es decir, hay muchas cuestiones incluidas en él. Les pido encarecidamente que lo tengan en cuenta, sobre todo a la comisaria Albuquerque, porque hacemos 15 recomendaciones a través de 40 argumentos que solidifican esas recomendaciones y 21 enmiendas específicas a los textos legislativos que se pueden tener en cuenta a la hora de incorporar nuestras modificaciones. Y solo un aspecto a destacar, no se pueden hacer reformas de pensiones sin hacer evaluaciones de impacto. Por eso necesitamos un comité europeo de seguimiento con gobernanza social para ver mejor el impacto de las medidas y sobre todo el impacto de unos regímenes sobre otros, porque no queremos que se debilite el sistema público, eso lo han dicho todas y todos, y solamente a través de ese seguimiento podemos saber cómo evolucionan las medidas. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. So I believe the remote connection, we'll try and leave it for later or near the end. So if I may, I would like to invite our Minister, Ms. Delgado, to respond to the debate. Thank you very much.
Gracias, presidente. Permítame concluir agradeciendo la calidad de este intercambio que refleja bien la riqueza del diálogo europeo y también el valor del Comité Económico y Social como espacio de encuentro entre instituciones y sociedad civil. He tomado buena nota de sus sugerencias. De este debate se desprende una idea compartida: la necesidad de seguir garantizando pensiones adecuadas en un contexto de transformación, y también que este objetivo solo puede alcanzarse preservando los fundamentos de nuestro modelo social. En ese sentido, quiero avanzar en el desarrollo de sistemas complementarios, avanzarles que eso puede ser positivo siempre que se haga desde el enfoque equilibrado y plenamente coherente con el pilar europeo de derechos sociales. La clave está en mantener una arquitectura sólida en la que los sistemas públicos sigan siendo un pilar central, garantizando suficiencia, equidad, solidaridad, mientras que los instrumentos complementarios actúan como refuerzo, ampliando oportunidades sin generar nuevas desigualdades. Este equilibrio es, en última instancia, el que permitirá avanzar hacia una verdadera convergencia social al alza en la Unión Europea. Sigamos trabajando desde el diálogo, desde la cooperación, para reforzar un modelo que es seña de identidad de Europa y uno de sus mayores activos. Un modelo que protege a todas las personas a lo largo de toda la vida. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Minister. And now I'd like to go to our Commissioner, Ms. Albuquerque, to respond to the debate. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, President. I'd like to thank everyone for your constructive remarks and for your engagement in this very important issue. I think we are truly aligned in our goals as the Commission's supplementary pensions package, as well as the wider Savings and Investments Union strategy, puts the needs of citizens at the centre. The Commission's recommendations are not about shifting responsibility onto individuals. They are about making savings for retirement easier, supplementing income from state pensions, not replacing them, making information clearer, and ensuring that no one is left behind. Because at the end of the day, pensions are not just an economic issue. They are also a matter of social fairness. However, all pension systems must be capable of delivering investment growth to be effective and create long-term value. A pension product that does not preserve or increase purchasing power over time will not meet citizens' expectations. It will shrink in real terms. We fully recognise that guarantees are an important source of safety, and safety is a key component of long-term confidence. But safety needs to be considered alongside the objective of delivering strong long-term outcomes. This is not a marginal issue. It is central to the integrity of pension schemes and the long-term trust of participants. The Commission's proposals aim to build trust in transparent pension products and supplementary pension providers that are subject to regulation and supervision and have clear fiduciary duties, offering both adequate security and real positive returns. Trust is of the essence to make sure citizens can make the most of their contributions to supplementary pensions. This is precisely what our pension package aims to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm going to make one more attempt to go to Damien Boslager. Are you there, Damien?
Yes, I'm here.
Please.
I'm now in front of the Parliament. Let me just react to a
Looking
couple
good.
of points thank you, that have been made. One of the members made a point about the impact assessment, and I think this is just an important message also to the Commission, that in the future, if we get such a review, it would be great to have a bit of a larger impact assessment of what the changes will actually mean. A second member in the discussion made a point about migration, and I just want to pick this up because if you look at what the current demographics look like, I think it's also important to look at the economic and also social effects of migration and how our current debate is actually harming our pensioners and all of our society because of anti-migration narratives. And the third point I just wanted to underline again, I think we are all aligned on supplementary pension, and it's very good to read your report on this. I think there are details to be discussed. You mentioned the prudent person principle. There are other details that we're looking into in terms of reporting burden. And I think it's also clear that the large challenge that almost all the speakers, underlined the importance of the Pillar 1 pay-as-you-go public and state systems. That makes a lot of sense. But it is also true, as I said in the beginning, that we have a real issue here and a need to reform. Maybe it makes sense to look into the direction of Japan, where they actually instituted a commission to update mathematically the pension systems based on retirement, basically on the factors of retirement age, the contributions and the benefits received. Because in the end, to be honest, it's a mathematical problem that our governments sadly very often fail to solve. And there's a lot of short-termism in this debate. And I would love that we can also, as a European level, help member states to potentially understand that there's real need to act for future generations. Thank you so much for the debate.
Thank you very much, Damien, and thank you to all the guests. Now, before we have the vote and then we will conclude this debate, I'd simply like to thank all of my guests here this morning, Minister Delgado and, of course, Commissioner Albuquerque, and Damien, who I hope is looking after his pension, but he's gone to the Parliament right now. Yes, indeed. Pensions are something for all ages, and I have to say, as a younger person, I didn't think a lot about it. If I did, I would have heeded my mother's advice and taken a proper job, but I never seem to do that. So suddenly it becomes an issue. But it is really important. So the next steps for the Parliament and the Council are to set their respective positions and find common agreement. We expect the EESC will be actively involved, we know we will, in the ongoing discussions, and we want to ensure that that point made in this great opinion is brought forward. As done with this opinion, the committee will continue to put its greatest effort to promote it, especially the recommendations, and of course to ensure that the frameworks and policies to ultimate benefit of EU citizens. So with that, again, thank you, the members, for your active participation in this. If I may, there's no amendments or there's no controversies in terms of the opinion. So back to your beloved voting machine. I now declare the vote open on ECHO 695 Supplementary Pensions Package PEPP and IORP. The vote is open. Handing over to Elena to chair after this. So thank you again, Elena. So we're now watching the vote. It's climbing across the 200 level, so we're getting excited. I will now look at the slowdown, and I think we're going to declare the vote. I would declare the vote is closed. And the result, a whopping 211 in favour, 2 against, abstention 5. Congratulations, Barrero. And we hope you get the greatest success. I'd now like to thank again my guests. I will leave for a few moments because I want to speak to Minister, and also to hand over to my good colleague Elena to continue with the rest. I shall be back, as they say, very shortly. Thank you very much.
So may I invite the speakers for the next debate to the podium? And also our rapporteur, Paul Rubik, is coming. You are here. Yes, we are just preparing the podium, changing the name tags. Bear with us, maybe 2 minutes. So we are now starting today's second debate on how to improve the innovation to market journey and address barriers for startups in the European Union. It was already as far back as 2010 that the EESC advocated for a 28th regime, the idea of creating a simple, optional EU framework for companies operating across borders to help them grow. Allow me to take the opportunity to welcome the recent EU Inc. Commission proposal of a new harmonized corporate legal regime on which the EESC is already drafting its opinion. I'm confident that our exploratory opinion requested by the Cyprus presidency and which is at the center of our debate on startups and scale-ups today will make a timely contribution to the future European Innovation Act, to be proposed by the Commission later this year. The EESC strongly supports another upcoming Commission proposal in this area, the ERA Act, to strengthen the European research area with the ambition of establishing fifth freedom, the free movement of research, innovation and knowledge. We are also closely following the negotiations on the new Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Framework Programme. Our committee welcomes the indicative budget of euros 175 billion proposed for the period 2028-2034. We seek to underline the importance of a 3% GDP national spending goal for research and innovation, asking for an additional 1% for preparedness and dual-use research. Why? Because Europe needs to reinforce innovation and research and catch up with commercializing the product of this innovation and research through spin-offs, startups and scale-ups. Indeed, in strategically relevant industries, there is a growing concern that the environment in Europe has become too fragmented, too dense and too slow to keep pace with rapid technological developments globally. This is why we believe that the upcoming European Innovation Act can offer relief for cross-border startups and scale-ups if it contains cross-cutting simplifications for them and can be enforced as binding in all member states. Also taking into account workers' rights and employee participation. Allow me to pass floor to speakers in today's debate as they might hold some answers on how to do all that. And I would like to give the floor to the first speaker, Mr. Yonotai. Are you okay? So my apologies. I haven't been informed. So I will hand the floor to Andrea Ticchero from the European Commission, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I'm here indeed representing the Task Force on Startups and Scale-Ups, part of the European Commission. And I will walk you through a bit the challenges that we have identified at the level of the Commission when it comes to bringing actually innovation to market. And I'll also share a few words on the plans for the upcoming European Innovation Act. But first, before turning to challenges, I would actually refer a bit to the positive and the assets that we have at the level of the EU, which we build upon our EU startups and scale-up strategy that was adopted a year ago by the Commission. So when looking at the assets that we have at the level of the EU, we see that we have a single market of 450 million people. And basically in 2025, we had the highest number of people founding a new company in Europe, reporting a 60% increase compared to 2023. Close to a quarter of scientific publications worldwide originate in the EU. And we also play a key role in global R&D and IP, so intellectual property creation. And we are also sitting on impressive amounts of savings, and I'm sure you might have touched upon this topic a bit earlier today. So our main challenge is not actually creating or generating ideas, but turning research into scaled products and services across the single market. What we have identified at our level is that there are barriers in commercialization, in access to finance, market access, talent infrastructure, and also coordination between member states. We see that, for example, funding is often strongest at the level of research, but then when companies need to pass through the valley of that between prototype and market, there is a financing gap, especially for capital-intensive technologies. The innovative companies also struggle to access customers, public procurement, and test environments, which actually slows the adoption even when technology is ready. We see the underuse of public procurement as a tool to bring innovation to markets, especially in critical technologies. Basically, we are investing 5 times less than US and South Korea in public procurement of research and development. And I would also continue with the fact that, for example, universities are responsible for 10% of patent applications, but only 1/3 of them are actually commercialized. And also talent retention remains a constraint. So when we look at the solutions, I have already mentioned the EU Startup and Scale-Up strategy. We also welcome the opinion of the committee, which actually reinforces the efforts that we put at the level of the EU institutions. In the EU Startup and Scale-Up strategy, we have 26 actions that are combining short-term and long-term measures to address all these barriers that I have just mentioned. I will only refer to, for example, the Lab to Unicorn initiative, which is well underway. For example, we have just closed a call of 20 million euro for the European startup and scale-up hubs that are rooted in strong university ecosystems to help them network and collaborate across border and provide access to startups and scale-ups to each other's respective services, infrastructures, but also corporates. We are also working on a blueprint for IP commercialization and spin-off creation. And also we are supporting the venture builder roles in research performing organizations. And the Commission is also aiming to put forward a pro-innovation procurement package. With the upcoming revision of the public procurement directives and the Innovation Act, we'll seek ways to improve and simplify the access to public procurement. And since I mentioned the European Innovation Act, here, just to share that we aim to accelerate commercialization, uptake, and diffusion of innovation across the EU single market. The Innovation Act will not focus on a given sector. It will set horizontal framework conditions for bringing innovations to market in all economic sectors. And it will also aim to introduce basic legal principles when it comes to establishment of legal, regulatory sandboxes. It will also look at ways to contribute to facilitating access of innovative products to public procurement markets by establishing a common pre-commercial procurement framework in the EU. And also, it will include measures supporting the valuation and commercialization of intellectual property rights. And we aim to adopt it in 2026. And with that, I would like to conclude my intervention, and of course, happy to hear the debate.
Thank you very much. I think you deserve an applause. It's always good to hear that the Commission appreciates our work. I'm sure Paul Rubik is very pleased to hear that. And the next speaker is Stefan Dobrev, who is the chair of the Governing Board and Executive Committee of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Ms. Vice President, dear members, thank you for the opportunity to talk about European innovation today. We feel this is one of the key instruments to boost European competitiveness. And in Europe, we have a great advantage in innovation. We're diverse. Diversity is at the core of evolution. It's at the core of doing things better. And diversity, as the motto says, is our strength if we're united. In Varietate Concordia is the motto of this union. But the unity is not easy to achieve. It takes conscious effort to work together, to see eye to eye, to trust each other, to be a community that takes the courage, takes the risk to do things in a new way, in a better way. As an institute, we bridge the gap between academia, entrepreneurs, and industry. From all three sides, we hear the same thing again and again on what can be done better to innovate, what the European Innovation Act can deliver. We hear overcoming fragmentation, a single market in innovation. It can't be that difficult. We've been talking about single market for decades now. We hear better regulation, not less regulation, better regulation. But we also hear culture, the courage to take risk, the courage to do things again and again. I have to congratulate the rapporteur in the committee on the report so far. You have covered extensively and very appropriately, in particular, the topics of fragmentation and regulation. You have identified the difficulty that is brought about through gold plating, the difficulty that a startup sitting in a Baltic state has selling to a German customer because regulations are different, although they shouldn't be, the difficulties that we face by regulating topics that have nothing to do with innovation but still inhibit risk-taking. All of this works well. So I would quite like to raise the topic of culture. Why do our companies not innovate more? Why do we, as the report correctly identifies, spend far less on research and development in our private sector than other regions in the world, even though we spend just as much as other regions on public support for R&D? What is the problem? It's multilateral, but a key issue is that we do not have the companies that work in innovation value chains. The trust between the actors is not quite there yet. We do not have the communities that allow a young researcher from Spain to launch a company in Cyprus, if that's most appropriate, and sell to a customer in France. It's not as easy as it sounds. We need to make it easy. We need to build these communities. And the European Innovation Act and the Startup at Scale strategy is a great opportunity to build these communities. At EIT we try. We have 9 knowledge innovation communities, KICs. The C is by far the most important letter. The standing community of trust is what allows people to be confident to take the risks to innovate, to be confident they'll find customers, to be confident they'll find offtakes, to be confident they can scale up. But this is not enough. We need to do it on a European scale. And we've demonstrated we can do this in Europe. If you look at cases where communities have been built, probably Erasmus is the most obvious instrument that fostered easy bridging of gaps across the European continent. It is straightforward for a young person from any European country to go to study elsewhere. Why? Because this union created the infrastructure, created the community, created the way to do this. This is what we need to do for innovation. We need to make it easy for a young innovator or not so young innovator from anywhere in the union to find customers, to get on the shelf, to make returns anywhere in the union. If we do this well, everything else will follow. Finance will follow, because finance follows the market opportunity. Excellence will follow, because in a truly competitive market, as we believe in this union, the best solution wins, and this is how innovation works. And social inclusion will follow, because if we've created opportunity for everybody, then people will find a way to focus their skills on what they do best. So with this, I thank you for your contribution to this debate. I thank you for helping build communities for innovators to take risks and make Europe more competitive.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker will be Reinhilde Wohlers, who is a senior fellow at Bruegel and also co-author of the report Regime Zero, Europe-wide Incorporation for Startups to Kickstart Innovative Growth. We have heard many questions, how to make it easy, how to make it simple, and how to encourage people actually to innovate when we have fragmentation on the single market. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity here. I want to spend a few words on why innovation is so important here, and going a bit more in detail this, because I want to make sure we get also with the Regime Zero the target right here. So we all know that innovation is very important for EU's long-term sustainable and resilient competitiveness challenge here, but what's really very challenging is the fact that we have a long-standing innovation gap on private spending on innovation here, a gap that actually has grown worse over time here. And this is mostly related to the fact that what we are missing compared to the US and China is this more Schumpeterian, creative destruction, contestable innovation system where you have new companies bringing new ideas to the frontier and thereby also challenging the incumbents here. So what we are really missing is these new innovative companies that are able to scale very fast and thereby contesting the frontier here. And that's also what we want to make sure that our Regime Zero is focusing on allowing that fast scale for innovative companies here. Although, of course, having a single market that operates for all companies is always a very good objective here, but I think we really need to focus with Regime Zero on these innovative high-scale, fast-scaling companies here. So that's our objective here. So it's not designed for already established, mature companies here, but for really startups with these innovative growth plans here, and that need to demonstrate, founders need to demonstrate these credible innovation and growth plans here. But we don't want to be too restrictive in terms of which criteria they need to satisfy, as long as they can demonstrate with their plans that they have this potential for innovative scaling here. We really want to make sure that the design of Regime Zero is such that it addresses their specific barriers that they are facing here, that actually the self-selection would work here, and that we don't need to be too strict on identifying innovative companies here, that it's really the design of the system itself that would help the self-selection into the system here. So what do we want such a Regime Zero to focus on to make sure that we address the barriers for the companies that we care about most? So this is first of all having this Hub Zero, which is really a fully digitized and very fast incorporation mechanism that's purely digital here. Also allows for very fast verification of Regime Zero companies here. And that's also then the task of Hub Zero here, is to allow also for, with standardized incorporation contracts, to have that process as fast as possible here. Nevertheless, also very clearly offering legal certainty as well here. So that's important, digitized, very fast incorporation and immediate recognition of the system across all countries, member states here. Zero capital regime, I think, is also very important here. But then also bankruptcy rules are very important, because they are very highly risky here and will have very important barriers if these bankruptcy rules would be too difficult here. So also there, I think the whole digitization process of the bankruptcy rules would be very important here, and also allowing a very fast restart after bankruptcy as well, including also looking at acquisition strategies here, because acquisitions is very often an exit mode here, and allowing also removing a bit the fragmentation we have within the EU on acquisitions of these startup companies would also be important. Then I think what also is very important is we don't want to address any kind of local labor regulations here, but what really matters is their ability to attract key talents here. And in that respect, what's really very important is a tax regime for share options here, and how these will be taxed and compensated here, because equity compensation is really important for attracting founders and key employees here. So that's really our focus here, where we would really emphasize that it's important to remove the fragmentation there. But the tax rates in general, and as well as other labor laws regimes for regular employees, we don't necessarily need to address within the regime zero, because it's not that critical here. What's really important is this equity compensation and how that will be taxed here, and particularly it will only be taxed at sale here. I think is really important. So that's just a few examples of identifying that regime zero should be really targeted to these typical companies, because they will be very important in addressing our innovation challenge here, and making sure that we have that designed sufficiently that it addresses the barriers that they are facing here, with the fully digitization, with the transparency here, equity compensation. That will also mobilize way more venture capital funding if they know that this kind of regime is actually offering this opportunity for fast scale as well. So thanks for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to discussing what you think on this regime zero.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Indeed. And now we would like to, and just incidentally, thank you, Elena, for stepping in for me for a brief period. So thank you. I'd like to now introduce Agnes Mathis to the floor, Director of Cooperatives Europe. 4 minutes. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais remercier le Comité économique et social d'organiser cette discussion qui va me permettre, en tant que représentant l'organisation des coopératives au niveau européen, de montrer ce que la diversité, que vous avez mentionné, M. Dovres, mais en l'occurrence la diversité entrepreneuriale, peut apporter à la thématique des start-up et scale-up sur certains points. Le premier étant par exemple la nécessité de combler le fossé entre la recherche et les marchés. L'idée étant de mettre en commun les connaissances, les technologies, les données pour stimuler la recherche et surtout encourager le transfert de technologies jusqu'à la commercialisation. Et dans ce cadre, les coopératives sont innovantes et mènent des projets, et comme les exemples sont parfois plus parlants que les grands discours, je voudrais présenter l'exemple de Start for Future, qui est une alliance européenne qui regroupe 20 universités, des incubateurs, des partenaires industriels de Munich, Barcelone, Édimbourg, et qui propose un programme de pré-incubation de 9 semaines visant à transformer des idées innovantes d'entrepreneurs en des concepts commerciaux validés. Donc ce genre de projet qu'il y a dans le mouvement coopératif mérite d'être promu et aussi reconnu. Le deuxième point est les investissements dans les compétences et l'attraction des talents. Vous en parlez dans votre projet d'avis, Monsieur Rubik, et effectivement c'est quelque chose qui est important. Des investissements accrus dans l'éducation, notamment les matières de sciences, technologie, ingénierie et mathématiques, mais surtout la suppression des cloisonnements au sein de l'enseignement afin de favoriser les compétences transversales. C'est-à-dire, l'exemple classique qu'on dit, c'est que les écoles d'ingénieurs devraient aussi former à la dimension entrepreneuriale dans toute sa diversité et aussi à des notions de management. Et dans ce cadre-là aussi, il y a des centres de formation coopérative qui s'efforcent de mener les deux de façon parallèle. L'autre question, c'est l'attraction des talents. Dans le projet de ce qu'on appelait le 28e régime, on mentionne la notion de stock option pour non seulement attirer, mais maintenir la main-d'œuvre qualifiée. Dans ce cadre-là, je trouve qu'il serait intéressant d'élargir à la notion de participation des salariés au-delà des stock options pour inclure le partage des bénéfices, la propriété des coopératives, parce que vous savez, dans les entreprises coopératives, ce ne sont pas des actionnaires, mais des hommes et des femmes qui possèdent des parts de l'entreprise, et également le financement des modèles participatifs, parce que ceci garantit de façon plus solide un contrôle contre les éventuels OPA hostiles et surtout la montée en puissance dans le processus décisionnel des investisseurs usagers. Le troisième point sur lequel je voudrais parler également, c'est favoriser la diversité de la forme d'entreprise. Il y a eu une étude qui a été publiée, je crois, en 2022 en Belgique, qui a démontré que le taux de survie des start-up innovantes coopératives, après 5 ans d'existence, était plus élevé que dans les autres formes d'entreprise, de 7%. Or, pour ce faire, les coopératives start-up, mais aussi les entreprises d'économie sociale dont les coopératives font partie et d'autres types d'entreprises, sont confrontées à des difficultés. Mais je veux dire quand même plus particulièrement les entreprises coopératives et d'économie sociale. Il y a des obstacles juridiques et administratifs. Donc, j'ai pas le temps ici d'en citer quelques-uns, mais je pourrais le faire. Peut-être j'aurai l'occasion à l'occasion du débat. Mais il y a aussi le problème de l'accès au financement. Les coopératives innovantes ont plus de mal à lever des fonds privés ou des capitaux que les start-up traditionnelles en raison de leur structure et de leurs propriétés spécifiques que j'ai décrites précédemment. Puisque effectivement, cette propriété collective et la gouvernance rend beaucoup plus difficile le transfert de pouvoir de décision à des investisseurs externes, voire pas possible, puisque a priori une coopérative n'a que des membres propriétaires. Donc, de plus, les investisseurs et les institutions financières ont une compréhension relativement limitée du modèle coopératif, qui est assez méconnu. Donc, ça paraît peu sûr ou peu rentable d'investir dans ce type d'entreprise, ce qui est dommage puisque nous avons des résultats. Donc il ne faut pas limiter les recherches en matière d'accès au financement à la simple question du capital risque, mais aussi aller vers d'autres modèles qui pourraient profiter à la diversité d'entreprises. Et je termine très brièvement, parce que j'ai oublié de le faire dans mon introduction, de remercier le Comité économique et social de toujours utiliser l'interprétariat, parce que ça devient de plus en plus rare, et surtout l'interprétariat avec des personnes physiques qu'on peut toucher, parce que ça devient de plus en plus rare, et je trouve que même si tout ce qui est technologie, tout ça c'est important, la relation humaine et la culture, comme vous l'avez mentionné, est tout aussi importante. Je vous remercie.
I know they're smiling up there in the boxes, and you deserve to smile indeed. Thanks for that nice compliment to the interpreters. And thank you, Agnes. I do believe in the cooperative movement. Indeed, when I founded my own organisation, we used the cooperative movement as the main model. And it's still, I'm glad to say, probably better now without me, but it's going strong still. So thank you for that, and I really support you on that. So I'd like to now take an input from Mohamed Inran-Manish, Managing Director of Consular Belgium. So the floor is yours, and you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very happy to be talking on behalf of Consular and share a little bit how we see this as a scale-up in Europe. Let me start with a simple question. Do you know the difference between an SRL and an SARL? Or the difference between a German GmbH or a Belgian Société Anonyme? Most people don't, but if you're trying to scale a company across all Europe, like we had, you have to know them, and many variation of corporate law across all 27 countries in Europe. And so that's really where the problem starts, and that's what makes scaling up in Europe very complicated. I like to compare Europe's innovation ecosystem to a football league. And in Europe, we're very good at two things. On one side, we're very good at supporting the small teams, like the kids who start to play football. They can have any opportunity to go and learn the sport. It's same for startups. We're very good at, at creating startups and turning research into early stage startups. And at the other hand, when it comes to celebrating the big teams who have the big stadiums and the big sponsors, we also are good at that. And same for the national companies. Like if you have a big industrial national champion, we're very good at celebrating them. But what we're missing is something critical in the middle. It's really the path to go from these smaller companies to the bigger ones. And that's where you don't get enough support. And so the key message, which you have heard many times, is that, in Europe, we don't really have this innovation problem. We have the skills, the competence, and the amazing entrepreneurs. But what we have is a scaling problem. So I'm representing Constellar. Constellar is an Earth observation company. We have 2 satellites in space. We are a pan-European deep tech company. We have entities in Germany, Belgium, and France, and more than 100 engineers across all of these countries. And so every time that we had to expand, we don't feel like we're just building and growing on top of what we have. We feel really that we have to rebuild the company from scratch with new legal structures, new administrative systems, and really a new interpretation of what should have been the same rules. And so at this stage, when you look for a company like us at the cost of just the legal and fiscal compliance of managing all of these entities, we're talking about like hundreds of thousands of euros. And that's really problematic for a startup where speed should be the main point. And it's not just, a question of having a little bit of more complexity or that it costs us a little bit more. It also creates problems for us because it is right now, scaring capital away. The investors, and a lot of them, coming outside of Europe, they are looking for simplicity, they're looking for predictability, and they're used simply, to systems where you have a centralized IP somewhere and then different arms to just operate and execute. And I can tell you the story from our recent fundraising. So we raised 37 million euros in a Series A. And so I'm not even going to talk about the complexity and the lack of digitalization in the different countries, if you want to raise that much money and put everything in place. But I just want to talk about what stood up to me, which was the face of the investors when you're trying to show them the company structures of, okay, we have these 3 entities, this is all of the IP we have, these are all of the people that are working for us in all of these different countries with all of this legal framework. And it does take a lot of time to show them that, the strength of the company, because on their side, they see complexity really as something that, they were trying to discount the valuation of the company. They see this as a strategic complexity. And so all of these are the challenges that we have, and something like the 28th regime is really a great start to start fixing those issues for us. It's not going to give us more funding directly. It's not going to make it easier to be an entrepreneur in Europe, but it's just going to make it easier to run and operate. Because, as an entrepreneur, it's already hard enough to create a company. It's even harder to scale. And what we really want is to have one scalable European company with local execution arms that are complying with the local laws. But we don't want to have to build a collection of companies just because we want to operate in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. And now we will have a presentation of INT 1112 on the EU Startups and Scale-up strategy, with a focus on European Innovation Act by the rapporteur, Paul Rubig. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The key question is, who supports startup entrepreneurs? Who is ready to help them to grow, to make a company, employ people? And we have a nice saying, it's family, fools and friends. Because they are ready to take risk. And all the others normally are risk preventers. So how can we match these risk preventers to go into the area of risk takers? Huh? It's, as I always say, it's engineers against lawyers. And that's the key question. How can we get a real burden reduction for the people who want to be entrepreneurial? How can we create incentives that they are able to do? Because at least with SME startups, spin-offs. They will create jobs. They will pay tax. So whatever we invest into these activities, there will be a return. And I think the EIT had checked that the return which we put in is 6 times multiplied in receiving tax. So for all the social, cultural, whatever activities a state has to do. So in EIT, and I thank the CEO Dobrev very much, EIT has created a wonderful infrastructure all over Europe. In all European member states, there is staff and experienced people who help startups and scale-ups to achieve a good result and to have safety. And we know that the agency in Budapest is a really European agency with European financial regulations, which are really complicated. So I think we have very few people in this world who understand the financial regulations of European Union. And that's the reason why we have to keep this agency, but we have to make a holding structure underneath this agency to make it possible that, first of all, a unified bookkeeping system, the international financial regulation standards should be applied in all of this. We could create a sandbox for a European institution. It would be a very good activity to have this sandbox with the 28th regime shown in our own institutions and agencies that we can do it. And of course it should be also driven by ISO 9000 to have the quality between the 9 or 10 gigs which are at present in this area. From the financing, it's clear that one of the largest budgets are regional funding and agricultural. So it could be an easy task to get more regional funding into these activities. And also from the agricultural side, we will need all the robots, all this modern AI technology to make agriculture very attractive also for consumers to get affordable prices. And we all know that the European Investment Funds, the European Investment Bank could focus very much on this area. Last point is we also would need a university ranking of all European universities, how many spin-offs they were able to create, a mapping and metrics of these activities, because then it's an incentive also for the intellectual property and the licensing which we could create on a global level. Therefore, I want to thank the INT team, the Secretariat. They had a lot of work to do, and I know it was not too easy, but also the working group was very effective with a lot of great ideas. I think it's a report which brings Europe forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. As usual, well done. Well, good presentation. Now we're going to go to the actual debate. And we go to the floor. So for 2 minutes, I'm inviting Miroslav Hines, sitting in 146. The floor is yours.
Okay, now it's working. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I will speak in Slovak. I'm here. Vážení kolegovia, ďakujem spravodajcovi Paulovi, ale ako aj všetkým, že sa podielali na príprave tohto stanoviska za spoluprácu a otvorený dialog. Európa dnes nepochybne potrebuje posilniť inovácie, výskum a schopnosť prenášať ich výsledky do praxe. Z pohľadu odborov však zdôrazňujeme, že tento proces nemôže byť vynímaný izolácii od jeho sociálnych dopadov. Inovácie musia slúžiť hlavne ľuďom, nie naopak. Preto vítame toto stanovisko. Jasne poukazuje na potrebu zosúladiť Európsky inovačný akt so zásadami spravodlivej transformácie. Je kľúčové, aby rozvoj startupov a scaleupov išiel ruka v ruke s ochranou práv pracovníkov, podporou kvalitných pracovných miest a aktívnym zapájaním zamestnancov do zmien. Zároveň si uvedomujeme, že podnikateľské prostredie v Európe čelí viacerým prekážkam, najmä administratívnym a regulačným. Ich zjednotenie je dôležité, avšak nesmie viesť k oslabeniu sociálnych štandardov. Zároveň však platí, že rozvoj technológií vrátane umelej inteligencie musí rešpektovať práva pracovníkov a nemôže viesť k oslabovaniu. Európa by mala stavať svoju konkurencieschopnosť na kvalitných inováciách, digitálnych zručnostiach a férových pracovných podmienkach, nie na znižovaní štandardov. Za mimoriadne dôležité považujeme aj inovácie do zručností, rekvalifikácie a celoživotného vzdelávania, ako bol spomenutý napríklad program Erasmus, ktorý spája. Práve pracujúci budú tí, ktorí budú niesť dôsledky technologických zmien a preto musíme byť na tieto zmeny pripravení a zároveň chránení. Podporujeme aj myšlienku lepšieho fungovania jednotného trhu, ten však musí zostať pevne ukotvený v princípoch sociálneho trhového hospodárstva, ktorý pán spravodajca veľmi dobre pozná. Dámy a páni, inovácie a sociálna spravodlivosť nie sú protiklady. Naopak, ich správne prepojenie môže byť základom silnej, konkurenčnej a zároveň spravodlivej Európy. Ďakujem pekne.
Thank you very much for that. I now go to Julia Marie Needham. Julianne, the floor is yours. Is there a problem with the mic?
Okay. I'll use this one instead then. I don't know why my microphone doesn't work. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So, if we're serious about improving Europe's innovation to market journey, we also need to be serious about who is currently not making that journey. Women entrepreneurs remain significantly underrepresented in startups and even more so in scale-ups. Across Europe, all female founding teams receive only around 2% of venture capital funding, while mixed teams receive less than 10%. This is not a marginal gap. It's a structural inefficiency in how capital is allocated within our innovation system. At the same time, the evidence is clear. Diverse founding teams outperform in terms of return on investment, innovation capacity, and resilience. So the issue is not a lack of talent or viable business models. It is a misalignment in the ecosystem. From an innovation to market perspective, this matters, because when access to finance, networks and scaling opportunities is uneven, we are effectively filtering out a large share of Europe's entrepreneurial potential before it even reaches the market. This is not only a question of fairness, it's a question of competitiveness. If Europe wants to close the gap with global innovation leaders, we cannot afford to systemically underinvest in half of our talent pool. This means that improving the startup and scale-up environment must go beyond simplification and speed. It also requires looking at how financial systems, investment criteria, and support structures actually function in practice, and whether they are enabling or constraining diverse entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Well done. Thanks very much. And now I go to the President of the Employers Group, Sandra Partey, sitting at 247. The floor is yours, Sandra.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks a lot to the panelists for all your input. It shows that we here in the EU do come up with brilliant ideas, not only on panels, but also in companies. But unfortunately, unlike the panels, the companies rarely do still scale here, grow here, or stay here. Mohamed, I really like the analogy to the football world. I think it really illustrates it. As my colleague Monica here remarked to me, the problem is also the World Cup and how we perform on this stage. We have around 8% of global scale-ups, while 60% are in North America. The median IPO size in the US is 13 times larger than in Europe. So what we do see, what we have is an innovation to market, a commercialization problem. And that's because of the fragmentation and the lack of cross-border investments, as you all have presented, illustrated. Startups here still face too many regulatory regimes. It's still too fragmented for them to be able to scale in Europe. What we also lack is the demand at home. We fund the innovation, but then we do not buy it and we do not help it access the markets. So what we need is the single market to live up to its name eventually. We should have startups being able to scale across Europe as easily as across one country. And we need the regulatory framework that enables that. And we also need to create markets and demand for the products and solutions developed here. Public procurement, strategic investment, demand-side policies must give the European startups their first real customers and help them grow within and beyond the EU. So if our startups cannot scale in Europe, it's not a market failure alone. It's a policy failure that we can and must correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I can't resist when anybody mentions football in this House because, as you know, the President likes football. And we'll have another debate about the performance in the World Cup, I'm sure, someday. But thank you, Sandra, for that interception. I now go to my good colleague, Christophe Lefebvre, sitting in 186. The floor is yours, Christophe.
Thank you, Chair. Je suis rapporteur de la nouvelle programmation du Fonds Horizon Europe et 195 milliards d'euros, c'est un signal politique fort pour relancer la compétitivité européenne et l'innovation. Je peux que féliciter la Commission et le Parlement pour toutes les mesures de simplification qui sont encore mises en œuvre dans le cadre de cette programmation. Mais au titre de ce comité, ça fait près de 10 ans que je participe à des audits sur les fonds structurels européens et toujours reviennent les constats que de nombreux pays sont en retard en matière d'investissement et n'utilisent que très peu leur dotation de financement européen au niveau national. De nombreuses structures abandonnent l'idée d'un cofinancement européen par manque d'un doctorat en bureaucratie ou d'absence totale d'explication en cas de refus de financement européen. En parlant du 28e régime, ne nous trompons pas sur les fausses bonnes idées visant à créer des zones de non-droit en matière sociale, une sorte de paradis artificiel accessible par tous, faute de définition précise sur la nature de l'entreprise. Une zone d'exonération de taxes alors que l'Union européenne a besoin d'une réglementation simple pour, par exemple, faire enregistrer une entreprise en 1 heure, comme c'est déjà le cas pour l'Estonie. Il faut garantir l'implication des salariés dans la gouvernance, mettre des clauses anti-abus et des mécanismes de contrôle préventif essentiels dans la gouvernance et la sécurité juridique du pilotage de l'entreprise. L'Union européenne a besoin de capital investissement, de capital risque, d'incubateurs, d'agences nationales qui accompagnent les start-up dans leur montage de dossiers de cofinancement européen. L'Union européenne doit protéger les créateurs de start-up et les salariés et les accompagner à l'échelle de la compétition mondiale. Et pour ça, la simplification de la législation actuelle de l'Union européenne est essentielle. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Christophe. I now go to Karina Marafa-Benga, sitting at 224. The floor is yours, Karina.
Thank you very much, President, and thank you to all the guests that have shared their views with us today. It was really an interesting debate. My first point builds a little bit on what the Commission representative, Ms. Tikeru, said about the fact that only 1/3 of the patents that are created in universities end up being commercialized. And I think we need to ask ourselves why. And the answer to that is the lack of entrepreneurial education in public universities in Europe, as another speaker has said. I am teaching in the largest economics university in Romania. We are building out of our own resources, and we have built a business incubator inside the university for our students, but we need more support, including European funding, which we are not getting any of at the moment for this kind of endeavors that complement entrepreneurial education with real-life incubators for the students. And then the second point that I wanted to raise to the panel is what kind of startups do we wish for? Do we want startups that perpetuate the old linear economic resource extractive model here in the European Union, or do we steer the startups towards circularity, towards purpose drive and mission drive. In my opinion, obviously, we need to incentivize those startups that, for instance, absorb CO2 from the atmosphere, reduce social inequalities. I know Mr. Dobrev made this point that inherently there will be social impact if we support the startups, but personally I disagree. I think we need a little bit more intentionality behind the type of companies that we support in Europe. Yeah, I mean, just curious to hear your thoughts on all of this. I think intention does matter in policy making, and it's not just the journey, but we also need to bear in mind the destination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina. I now go to Neil Walker, sitting at 357. Neil, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The European Innovation Act has the potential to be a key pillar of the Commission's Startup and Scale-up strategy within the framework of its competitiveness compass. The recent postponement of its publication may well be due to its extremely wide scope. Closing the innovation gap requires measures spanning academic research, access to venture capital and other forms of finance, tax incentives for entrepreneurs, public and corporate procurement, regulatory simplification and specialised regulatory sandboxes. I strongly support the opinion, although, and with regard to some earlier comments made by Reinhilde Voigelers from Bruegel, I would question whether the opinion makes a convincing argument for setting aside the Commission's proposed definitions of innovative firms and its criteria for defining startups and scale-ups deserving of special treatment. It is really important that any credible alternative would somehow be more effective and without creating a risk of it being inconsistently applied across member states. And in passing, like Paul, I would like to pay tribute to the work of the EESC Secretariat in helping to achieve compromise text on numerous amendments that were proposed by study group members ahead of the section meeting vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. And I now go to Silja Produsic, sitting at 257. The floor is yours.
Mr. President, distinguished guests, committee members. Europe has many good ideas. What it often needs is a clearer and fairer way to turn them into strong companies, quality jobs and public trust. Startups need simpler rules, easier access to funding, faster place to test new ideas, and the freedom to grow across borders without starting from zero in each member state. However, workers cannot be viewed merely as a cost to be reduced. They are the people who bring innovation from the lab to real customers. The message is simple. Europe's startup strategy must include skills, social dialogue, and decent work. By building innovation on trust, talent and inclusion, Europe can help startups grow faster while making its economy stronger and fairer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I now go to Laura Albu, sitting at 19. Laura, the floor is yours.
From Group 3, Ms. Julianne Nyman already mentioned the massive economic failure that women-led startups in the EU still receive less than 2% of the total venture capital. I will be practical on this matter. For the Innovation Act to succeed, we need, among other, two things. Accountability, so to have mandatory gender disaggregated data, and diversity targets for any startup receiving EU public funding. We cannot fix what we don't measure. And second, broaden our definition of innovation and include the social economy and cooperatives. Women lead in these sectors, yet they are systematically excluded from the deep tech conversation. EU cannot be a global leader using 50% of its talent, so innovation must be inclusive by design, not an afterthought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now go to, sitting at seat 110, Maria Danisman. The floor is yours, Maria.
Thank you very much. I will be very
frank with you, I struggled a bit how to approach this debate because in a way it feels like we know what to do, yet we still keep going in circles. No matter how many new well-branded initiatives we introduce under the umbrella of the EU, we will not succeed in helping our startups to scale if we do not address the fundamentals. Without a real European capital market, without a truly unified regulatory environment, we are asking companies to grow in a system that still remains fundamentally divided. And there is no shortcut around this. However attractive it may be to launch new frameworks and instruments, scaling innovation requires a structural reform. And that is the hard truth. There is also a deeper issue that we don't address enough, and that is how we actually deal with failure. In Europe, failure is still often treated as something to be avoided at all costs rather than as a part of the innovation process. Our insolvency regimes are still too slow, too complex, and in many cases too punitive. And that sends the wrong signal that if you take the risk and it does not work out, the consequences may follow you for years. We cannot expect a culture of innovation if we do not also accept a culture of failure, because innovation means taking risks. It means trying, failing, learning, and then hopefully trying again. So if we are serious about strengthening Europe's innovation capacity, then we need to be equally serious about creating an environment where failure is not the end but part of the journey. And I think the EU Inc., like also the upcoming Innovation Act, are a step in the right direction, but will only be able to address limited part of this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marie. And I appreciate that, again, from all of the speakers. So that's the end of the debate. Paul, it's an important debate, as you know, so I'm going to give you a little extra, so you have 3 minutes to reply. Off you go.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank all the speakers. We learned how much impact it has, what the framework is and what we can do. And, of course, also on the political level, we have to be very creative to see how we can meet this challenge. We have heard that only 8% of the scale-ups are created in Europe. So the base is, of course, always education, vocational training, skills, which makes it possible to produce products and services for the consumers. The most important part in a startup is that you find consumers who buy your product. So the real decision is done by the consumers how much you are ready to pay and if the quality is good. And if you look behind the borders of European Union, what can we do to be stronger in export? Only very few of our SMEs are active in export. And therefore the European Institute of Technology has also established some hubs outside of European Union to help entrepreneurs who want to sell their products outside of European Union to create success stories. And if we look to Silicon Valley, it's very clear that we have other hubs like in India or in China or wherever, where definitely an infrastructure has to be there, where you knock on the door and say, okay, I'm interested in this US market, can you organize contacts for me where I can get consumer base to sell my products or my services. Another way is public financing. I have said European Investment Fund, investment bank or whatever. I think the public-private partnership could play a key role because the finance from friends, fools and family is very restricted. So how can we get outside of the banking activities a finance instrument which makes it possible to grow a company? And so the key answer normally is we give grants. So we give taxpayers money and hope that a return will apply. I think it's much better to create equity, minority equity for startups where you take a personnel risk. Because if you take a personnel risk, it's totally different from when you spend public money which doesn't belong to you. If you give your own money, you get very creative, you look how to spend it rightly, you make the advisory into the right direction, and that's the reason why this entrepreneurial thinking is not only something for companies or startups. It's also in our administration, in the Commission, in all our European institutions, entrepreneurial thinking is the base for a success story for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, I'm really interested in the many comments made in the debate. So, as usual, in replying, we will sort of go in a reverse order with 4 minutes each. So I'm going to Mohammed Iranimanish. You have 4 minutes. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, par rapport à cette diabolisation des startups que j'ai pu entendre dans certaines remarques, je voulais quand même juste rappeler une entreprise comme Constellar aujourd'hui. Donc, nos données satellites sont utilisées par la Commission européenne et beaucoup d'États membres pour des initiatives d'adaptation climatique. Donc, la mission de Constellar est très positive. L'entreprise a été cofondée par une femme et je dirais que les femmes sont représentées à un niveau supérieur à la moyenne dans ce genre de boîtes space et deep tech en Europe aujourd'hui. Et comme je disais aussi pendant mon intervention au début, nos 3 entités aujourd'hui sont en Belgique, Allemagne et la France. Donc Belgique, Allemagne et la France qui sont les pays probablement les plus avancés en matière d'acquis sociaux et de droit du travail. Donc ce n'est pas du tout la vision d'essayer d'éviter et de réduire les standards et de trouver le moyen de bypasser ces régulations. Nous, ce qu'on se demande, c'est est-ce que c'est possible du coup d'éviter de dupliquer ces régulations. C'est surtout ça qu'il faut éviter. Et ce que je pense que si le 28e régime peut permettre, c'est de pouvoir, pour les entreprises qui le veulent, de commencer en fait avec une base et une structure assez simple et qui soit portable. Et puis ensuite, au cours de leur croissance, en se développant, ils peuvent s'étendre à de nouvelles marchés, géographies, et avoir accès à de nouvelles compétences aussi, tout en gardant un système de gouvernance qui soit relativement constant, avec des règles internes qui ne doivent pas tout le temps changer et des droits d'actionnaires et de travail qui ne doit pas changer tout le temps. Donc, ce qu'il faudrait pour les startups, c'est que au fur et à mesure qu'on est en train de se développer en Europe, on puisse ajouter des couches opérationnelles qui soient plus complémentaires, mais pas que ça se transforme où à chaque fois on est en train de rajouter une couche de complexité légale, parce que c'est pas ça le but. Si on veut avoir aujourd'hui des champions européens, parce que c'est de ça qu'on parle, c'est ce qu'on veut des entreprises européennes. Du coup, il faut leur donner une réglementation et une base sur laquelle ils peuvent opérer et exécuter au niveau européen. Et c'est seulement comme ça qu'on va pouvoir après aussi gagner la Coupe du Monde, comme on discutait. Merci.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I now go to Agnes Mathis. You have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je ne ferai pas d'allusion au football parce que je n'y connais rien. Donc, de mon côté, il n'y aura pas de remarques là-dessus. Simplement, par rapport aux commentaires qui ont été faits, je retiens la question qui est dit « What kind of startups and scale-up do we want ?» Effectivement, est-ce que c'est pour moderniser un peu un système de marché ou est-ce que c'est pour aller vers du sustainable en lien avec l'environnement et je crois qu'effectivement il faut favoriser ce type de start-up et pas donner l'image des start-up scale-up uniquement dans voilà on va utiliser l'innovation et la technologie. Parce qu'il y a des projets qui existent, mais dans ce cadre-là, on remarque que la difficulté de trouver des financements et du soutien est plus élevée. Parce que si c'est bien sur le papier, ça ne réussit pas toujours dans le marché. Par exemple, nous avons une société qui est la version coopérative de RNB, qu'on appelle FairNB, et qui a cherché à développer donc ce système de logement partagé, mais ce n'est pas tellement suivi par les investisseurs, mais surtout par les usagers. parce qu'il y a une différence de coût qui est un peu plus élevée que pour le modèle que j'ai précité. Donc, ce qui me fait faire un lien sur la nécessité d'éduquer un petit peu aussi le consommateur et l'utilisateur des startups scale-up, parce que sinon soit le projet ne marche pas, ou alors si, quand il est pertinent, il est racheté et il quitte l'Europe. La préservation des droits acquis, oui. Alors évidemment, ce qui concerne tout ce qui est la simplification de la régulation, c'est une question de balance et d'équilibre, mais ça me fait rebondir quand même sur l'importance aussi d'avoir des conseils qui soient adéquates, qui répondent bien à la demande de start-up scale-up, qui répondent bien parfois à la difficulté du fait que les porteurs de projets n'ont pas la formation nécessaire pour suivre l'investissement et le manager. Donc, je crois que c'est important de bien développer ce réseau de soutien spécifiquement pour les start-up scale-up parce qu'ils ont des problèmes qui sont particuliers à leur identité. Et pour finir, par rapport à tout ce qui est régulation et l'idée du 28e régime, je crois qu'il est très important de rappeler la diversité du monde entrepreneurial et utiliser tous les atouts possibles qui sont ouverts par les diverses formes d'entreprendre, puisqu'il n'y en a pas un qui est mieux que l'autre ou plus performant que l'autre. Peut-être les coopératives sont un petit peu plus lentes à se mettre en route, mais après, c'est comme, vous savez, c'est comme un coureur de fond, quoi. C'est parti, ça marche, il y a du succès. Donc, je crois qu'il faut vraiment veiller à garder cette diversité dans les différents projets qui sont mis en œuvre par la Commission. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Thank you indeed. And now we go to Reinhard Weglers, and again, the floor is yours for 4 minutes.
Thanks a lot. I want to have 3 comments here. So first of all, I heard a lot of startups and scale-up mentions at the same time here. I think the focus on scaling up is really important here, particularly the fast scaling up of innovative ideas here, because as I try to explain, that's really where we can have a lot of return in terms of pushing our innovation angle here. And not all startups actually have the ambition to scale up here. There are very specific barriers for this scaling up that we need to be able to address. And if we put it still all under the same umbrella of starting and scaling up, I think we may miss actually the focus that we need on the scaling up. That brings me to the second point that was raised on the definition of innovative scale-up companies and for who the 28 regime should then be much more targeted. I really want to be also very careful not to overburden the definition here with very strict definitions here, and if you don't have that definition, like for instance in percentages of R&D or patent or whatever, it has to be a rather flexible way of showing that you have this ambition at startup, that you want to have these innovative ideas for which you really need to scale up here, and it's much more proving with documents that you also need in order to prove for venture capital funds, for instance, that you have these innovative ideas. And it's really from the design of the mechanism that we really also want to make sure that this is so sufficiently specifically designed that it's only those which really want to scale at EU level that for them this is really designed here. So that brings me then to the last question in terms of the importance of having still a regulatory framework here. The 28 regime is not about avoiding regulation here, as you already mentioned. It's not that these companies want to be avoiding regulation or don't want to pay for whatever. What is really important is to avoid actually uncertainty around regulation and also the cost of having to deal with the fragmented regulation. And that's what we need to address also with the 28 regime here, making sure you have an incorporation regime that's very clear from the start that allows to be able to operate across member states here. But also what this hub also should be doing here is providing transparency on regulations that still exist in terms of labor, in terms of tax, whatever, that is not necessarily harmonized within and doesn't need to be harmonized, but that at least there is also a lot of clarity on this and transparency here, and that's also a task that I think the hub also needs to do, is provide the different templates, that reflect that kind of heterogeneity here, so that it's easier for for companies to very fast scale across the different regulations here without necessarily having to harmonize the different regulations here. So transparency is also super important here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would now like to invite Stéphane Dobré to take your 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the contributions. I heard a lot of words that sounded very familiar. The inclusion of women, the importance of diversity, the importance of missions, the importance of making sure entrepreneurship is a widely recognized skill. At the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, as you probably know, we support all of those. We have a specific women entrepreneurs program. We have a very strong focus on entrepreneurship skills. We do believe in this, and I don't think there is a disagreement with the member on this one. We also see the barriers to those objectives being achieved, and they all have to do with a level playing field, with, again, a single market, not just between member states, but also within industries. If we ask women, if we ask social entrepreneurs, what stops them from scaling, and I do agree scaling is the big problem, it's not about specific policies. It's not about capital. The private market actually does fund scalable ideas. It almost invariably is about access to the market. When you go to a venture capitalist, the first thing they ask you is the market traction. When you go and try and sell your product to a customer in another country, the first thing you ask yourself is, who do I trust, who do I talk to? So it's this community, it's this connection, this market access that we need to foster. We need to have the instruments to support, and I do think the European Innovation Act is a good start. Again, our KICs are only one version of this. Public-private partnerships are probably not a bad one. So market access is the first one. The second one has to do with a level playing field with existing industry. Let's be honest, European industry is in very large parts afraid to innovate. Why do women not sell to large companies in the DAX? Because large companies in the DAX are afraid to work with startups. They tell us, no, we don't want to do with these small things. And why? Because they're too protected. Because there is not enough competition that gives the incentives, the returns on innovation, and at the same time, that gives them a threat if they don't innovate. So the answer to more innovation, the answer to more inclusion, but also the answer to acquiring skills, to actually young people wanting to learn how to be entrepreneurs is the payoff there, or is a protected industry out there going to stop them from selling their product, going to stop them from being successful with their idea? In the end, it's about fairness. And I do think only if we have a fair market out there do we give the new ideas that will make us competitive a chance. And it needs to be fairness at a very fundamental economic and social level, where if I'm good, I'm rewarded. The mechanisms are out there, the infrastructure is out there, the community is out there, I know who to talk to, they listen to me. And this is what a European Innovation Act can bring. Fairness, in a very fundamental sense, will make us more innovative and more competitive. Being unfair to innovators is the spiral down. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Indeed, thank you very much. I'd now like to give the final response to Andrea Tikaru, and again, 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for the debate. So, first of all, I would take a bit of a step back when it comes to the vision, right? Because I think there were points related to reforms, to, where is our intentionality for this type of companies, and what we aim to achieve with the strategy and with everything that we are doing, for example, at the level of the Commission, is to make sure that we transform ourselves into this true startup powerhouse. And beyond that, we see the strategy as a roadmap to get there, and to foster also that mentality shift that was also brought in today in the debate. So indeed, we do need a structural reform, and we do need a cultural shift. And when it comes to intentionality for the type of companies we support, we look at the link with competitiveness. And there, what is important is to support those companies that are active in critical sectors in particular. Now, turning to the EU Inc., because of course there were a lot of references to this proposal, which we see as a game changer. We find it as our offer for our businesses in order to lower their barriers, in order to decrease their costs, and to make it easier for them to seize the benefits of the single market. So the proposal, actually, I will not go into a lot of details because we don't have a lot of time, but it will be digital by default. It will ensure this faster and cheaper access setup of a company, full digital registration. It will also help the operation cross-border. So it's not only about setting the company, but also operating it in the single market. When it comes to, for example, creation of branches and subsidiaries, on submission of company data, this will all be done fully digital. But it's also about the point when it comes to closing down, because this is very much linked to that change of perspective and mentality that we have to foster. So in the EU Inc., there are some provisions that refer to fully online dissolution and liquidation procedures, in having fast-track liquidation available for companies without assets or debt. When it comes to simplifying winding up procedures for innovative startups, so for example, reduce costs of administrative burden, use of standard forms and electronic communication, and so on. So the idea is basically to reduce the cost of failure and not the number of startups. When it comes to workers' rights, I think it's very important from my side to emphasize that EU Inc. fully maintains workers' rights. It's a proposal to streamline company law. It does not affect labor law or other type of provisions related to employees' rights. So we focus very much on how companies are set up and managed, from registration to corporate governance to share structures to digital company procedures. And indeed, we do not stop only at that. We have other measures when it comes, for example, to financing. We look at accompanying measures such as taxation for employee stock options in the moment of taxation. This is also included in the proposal. When it comes to financing, we are working intensely on this Scale Up Europe fund that should help scale-ups and bridge that second value that they have to pass. And it's an instrument that should be proposed by the Commission very, very soon in the coming weeks. Buying innovation, because this was also mentioned, and it's an important element I also referred to in my opening remarks. Public procurement and actually creating the demand, it's essential, and we share that, but not only from the public perspective, but also working with corporates, because there we have an opportunity we do not actually valorify enough. For entrepreneurial education, we are indeed working with the EIT on making sure that we enhance that, and also the upskilling. We're also working on a blueprint for academic career development framework to reward the research commercialization activities. But this is just to give you a bit of a flavor. When it comes to the definitions that the Commission has put forward a month ago in a recommendation that was actually accompanying the EU Inc. proposal, they all were developed because we had no single and widely accepted definitions at EU level. There was a lot of fragmentation and lack of transparency, and we could have, it created a lot of confusion also for startups and scale-ups and innovative companies, but they're also important because they help us in targeting policy measures as we go ahead, and also funding. And here we also think about the next MFF. So they play an important role. And finally, last but not least, on gender. Here and women, indeed, I share the views that were mentioned here. We have to do more because basically we are not valorifying the talent that we have here. And there were in the EU, and there were initiatives under the EIC Accelerator. So, for example, since 2020, women-led companies have gone from 8% to nearly 30% of EIC Accelerator investments. And the numbers speak for themselves. Women Tech EU, it's a program, for example, where they were able to get 75,000 grant per company, but they raised up to 243 million, and they created 580 jobs, just to give you an idea of how fast and how much potential is there if we do indeed target funding and policy measures for women. And here the Commission has put forward the gender equality strategy back in March. An action plan for women in research, innovation and startups is in the making, and it should come towards the end of the year, but also the first gender and diversity index, because I think the data related to gender was also mentioned. So this will give us comparable and granular data on inclusion across the innovation environment. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for the very rich debate and for the excellent work done here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrea, and thanks to all our guests and speakers here this morning, and also to you in your active participation in this extraordinary and important debate. Before we go to voting on the opinion, I just wanted some remarks just to, again, make it clear that innovation is key to maintaining and enhancing global competitiveness of the EU. This was stressed by the recent Draghi, Leti and Hayter reports. And you can see it's something that came across in a range of discussions I've had in the last month, whether it's been in the Parliament, whether it's been in the United States or even in Moldova. Many people are looking to a Europe that really prioritises innovation because we are in a different place geopolitically. We know that. But now it's time to get that right, not just for the football. The other key takeaway is, of course, retaining the talent. In EU and free start-up companies, from the need to search for financing outside the EU to scale up, and to address traditional risk-averse culture of the EU, and to celebrate entrepreneurship in all its forms. One of the things I have said from day one over my experience is entrepreneurship is part of the drive for innovation. It always has been, and it needs to be encouraged. And I would like to think in the Europe that is now being rebuilt that there will be room to make innovation and entrepreneurship twin players so that we get the best results. Europe has a strong tradition in its drive to protect rights, workers' rights, to protect human rights, and indeed to create a society where inclusion is the main value, not exclusion. We need to get our economy strong to make it stronger, because without it, nothing else works. And that was another message I would bring to this debate, especially with the spring meetings in Washington. So I would like to conclude by thanking all of you again for this debate and for ensuring that it is such an important part of this plenary. So I would like to go to the opinion right now, int 1112, and from what I gather, there are some amendments, but I think they've been accepted, so I will still have to note them in terms of alerting you on the floor. So 1.4 is an amendment. It's accepted by the rapporteur, and from what I gather, the floor. Okay, that's agreed. 1.5 accepted by Paul, and no objections on the floor. No, that's good. 2.2 is also accepted by Paul, and I'm looking around at the audience and the members. It's accepted. 2.2 and 1.6, an amendment, again accepted by the rapporteur and accepted by the floor. And 2.2 and 1.7 is also an amendment accepted by the rapporteur, and from what I gather, the floor. Okay. Well, at that stage, since we're all set to go, take your voting machines, and the vote is open. Okay. Okay, let's see where we are. We're looking like we're declaring the vote closed. Just one got in there as I said it, but it's okay. So the vote is closed. And we have 209 in favour, 1 against, abstention 4. Congratulations, Paul, and all the team and all the people who worked on this. Now, there's a few decisions before, and we will have a break before the next debate because of various. But before we go to those decisions, once again, thank you to the guests. You're all free to go if you wish. So thank you very much for your intervention. Okay, thank you. Okay, can we do the decisions, please? I'm talking about number 1, change in section membership, Rule 23, Rules of Procedure for Approval. The following change in section membership has been requested. Member Deville Judakite, she's Group 3, wishes to leave the NAT section and join INT. I know these things have been probably discussed and agreed, but nonetheless they have to be agreed by the plenary, by you, and I don't see any objections to that. That's great. Deauville, you're changing football teams, so that's good. 2, own initiative opinion, Rule 55 of the Rules of Procedure for Approval. Further to the proposal from the Bureau, the Assembly is asked to approve the following requests. Issue the list own initiative opinions. Group 1 is harnessing the full potential of EU free trade agreements for economic security. 6 recs for December. Have we agreement? Yes, we have. The next one, strengthening structured participation of European and social organised civil society in the Global Gateway Strategy through effective social and competitive impact of the projects, 6 October, and that's REX. Everybody is in agreement and still staying with REX. Avenues for boosting the internationalisation of European SMEs and social economy enterprises for a better quality of life. And that's agreed as well. Okay, that's the decisions. Now, again, we will do a break in a minute, but just before I do, just to make some quick remarks, because I may not have time at the end. As always, I say thank you sincerely, all of you, for the huge work you do and the participation that you give in these plenaries. Especially this one, and I have to salute your dedication, each and every member, to ensuring that we had successful debates and successful participation as well. As I always say, one of the things we all do as the new members, I hope, are beginning to, settle into the regime. I hope you're not too unhappy at the moment, and that you're learning the good and the bad and the usual. So I hope that's working as well, because it's really important that we keep the morale up. Also, I always remember, because when I was president of the group, and I was president even now, I'm very privileged and honoured to know people will have had sad losses between one and another. And I keep reminding you to remember that all of you are human beings. We all have families, and somebody maybe beside you who has had that loss, and just to remind yourselves that that is also the reality in the world that we live in. I'm not going to embarrass people by mentioning names, looking at a person, but some people will may be fighting elections in the next few weeks and all the rest. So I wish you well as well in that endeavour. And while we want you to be successful, we don't want to lose you either. So it's a dilemma. So my best wishes to all of you who are endeavouring new ideas and new projects over the next few weeks. After that, I simply am going to, because of certain technicalities and delays, we are going to restart at 11:25. So please come in sharply at 11:25 and we will continue with the next debate. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, let's get going. We need to get going, please. So if you take your seats. Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, there's the bell. The bell tolls.
Okay, now it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's go. Right, I'd like to first of all welcome you to this key cultural debate, Europe for Culture, Culture for Europe, with my good friend Glenn McAuliffe, European Commissioner for International Fairness, Youth, Culture and Sport, Nila Reetley, Member of the European Parliament and Chair of the Committee on Culture, Education, remotely coming, and then Tanya Hristova, Member of the Committee of Regions, Vice Chair of the Commission of Social Policy, Education, Employment, Research and Culture, and Lars Ebert, Secretary General of Culture Action Europe, linked to the adoption of the opinion SOC 853 on Culture Compass for Europe. So, if I may, a few words of introduction from my side. So, as you know, and we say this a lot in this House, we're living in very strange and somewhat dark geopolitical times. And in such times, it may be very tempting to see culture as some kind of luxury, some kind of amusement, but something not important. The contrary is the case. I certainly do not share any views like that. On the contrary, I believe culture can help us, save us, or at least be part of what sustains and reminds us in Europe what it is to be civilised. Culture is not only an individual matter, but a social and economic, and indeed, more importantly, a political one. Beyond these reflections, let us look at what culture means to the European economy and society. Employment in the cultural sector concerns nearly 8 million people, accounts for 6.4% of all businesses in the business economy and 1.4% of total net turnover of the EU's business economy. So it's not small. Culture is also central to international relations, both among European citizens and between Europe and its neighbours, and indeed partners worldwide. There is no need to stress how relevant culture is for this committee and for all the groups in it, employers, workers, civil society organisations. Former President Luca Jair recall that culture was one of your priorities in your presidency, and indeed I have congratulated you many times on the pursuit of that reality. The European Parliament, represented here by the Chair and his committee, Culture, Nila. Nice to see you again, and nice you're coming in online, and I hope you enjoyed this debate. And glad to know the Committee of Regions Rapporteur, Tanya Hristova, is here, and of course civil society organisations such as Culture Action, such as represented here by Lars Ebert. So we're pleased, of course, to welcome Commissioner McAuliffe, who has been one of the key architects of Culture Compass, somebody I've already met, I'm very glad to say. There is a football connection, but I'll let you guess that one through the meeting. But those of you who know your football will have it guessed already. Otherwise, I'm pleased indeed to begin this debate by giving you the floor for the next 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay.
Good morning, dear President, President Boland, honourable members and ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow we're going to celebrate Workers' Day. So I will start with a worker. She gets up every day at 6 o'clock in the morning. She answers her emails. She gets on a train, goes to work until 7 o'clock, then she gets on another train and she goes to her second job, the one that she actually trained for, where she will spend the next 4 hours of her day composing music that will outlast what any of us did for the rest of the day. So tomorrow we celebrate Workers' Day. That worker, she will probably feel not included in that celebration, when she should be right at the center of it. Nearly 70% of all artists in the European Union, of all creatives in the European Union, work like this. 2 jobs, 1 vocation, and almost 0 protection. This is the hidden reality of a sector that generates over 200 billion euro every year in value added, that supports 8 million jobs in the European Union. And I want to argue this morning that this is a sector that holds Europe together in ways that numbers can never fully capture. But this room is a room that understands the reality of that worker. This room understands her reality. Because here, in this room, are workers, employers, and civil society. So this is exactly where I want to be today, in this room. Let me make the case. First, and this is my first argument, cultural workers hold democracy together. Put 2 Europeans in a room and they will disagree about politics, they will disagree about economics, they will disagree about almost anything, including what their favorite topping on pizza should be, whether pineapple should be allowed on pizza. Now, I'm commissioner for everyone. I will keep my opinion to myself, but if you like pineapple on pizza, we will not be friends. But give those same 2 people a movie, a film, a story, a piece of music, and suddenly there is a bridge. The ability to be in the same room, to disagree, but to still keep talking. That capacity to hold disagreement without breaking is a learned skill. And the cultural workers are the ones who teach it. Through every film that they make, through every stage that they build, through every heritage site that they restore, and every song that somehow says something that we cannot say in these rooms. So in this moment, when extremism and where the challenges that we face are continuously growing, this work is our first line of defense. And the workers who are doing it deserve to be named as such. They deserve to be called workers. Second, cultural workers are workers. How many of you in this room have a son or a daughter, a niece or a nephew, who has dreamt of following her passion, of doing work in the cultural sector? Whether it's music, whether it's theater, whether it's writing. But you have gently, quietly, lovingly tried to dissuade them, talk them out of it. Because you know that the applause you get after your performance will not pay the bills at the end of the month. I see some nodding faces. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable or guilty. This is not why I am here. I'm here to make it easier to one day be able to say yes. over 1 million companies, 8 million jobs, growth sector, and this is one of the only reasons why Europe remains the most desirable place on earth to live, to visit, to work, to study in, and to build something. And yet the workers, at its very heart, the writers, the composers, the singers, the musicians, the digital creators, the ones who build digital platforms and who carry European culture beyond our borders, they are working 2 jobs without contracts, with little protection, and without the basic dignity that every other worker in Europe is supposed to be guaranteed. This is why we are proposing an EU Artists' Charter, because I want to be able to look each and every one of these people in the eye and say we have clear principles that say that you have rights, you have dignity, and in the same as every other worker. So Workers' Day should mean something for them too. Third, I see cultural workers as diplomatic workers. Bono once said that Europe is an idea that should become a feeling. Yes, I'm quoting an Irish musician on the eve of an Irish presidency, with a president coming from Ireland in this institution, and I can assure you this is purely coincidental. But the point stands. Rules make Europe function, but cultural workers make Europe matter to Europeans and to the world that is watching from outside. Our stories, our creativity, our heritage, they can travel and they can reach parts of the world that no other trade agreement can. Cultural workers are, in this sense, ambassadors, which is why I will be unambiguous. There can be no normalization of relations with aggressor states, whether it's Russia or anyone else, when aggression continues. Culture can never be weaponized to be used for propaganda. Ukraine is part of our European family. Ukraine is part of our European family, and we protect our family. Now comes the honest part of my speech. To me, Workers' Day has always been about a demand of where we want to be, where we want to go. So naturally, I want to touch on the topic of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is reshaping the work of every cultural worker faster than any of us would have ever predicted. I was recently following an interview from the director of the Modern Art Museum in New York, who compared the emergence of artificial intelligence and the impact that this had, or this has, on the cultural sector to the invention of photography and the impact that this had on painting. That was a moment when painters had to decide, who am I? What am I for? In this discussion on artificial intelligence, I think history offers us some comfort. Cultural workers have survived disruption before. Think of Napster, think of streaming, think of the full digitalization of the entire business models. Each time the cultural sector adapted. They adapted. And every time they found new ways to create, new ways to connect, and new ways to survive. But here is also what history tells us. Innovation moves fast, workers adapt, but protection always comes later. Why do we let this happen time and again? We cannot ask the people who make our culture, who carry our culture to all the world, carry this transformation alone. Not when they are already working 2 jobs. The Culture Compass is our answer. This is our framework for cultural policy across 4 dimensions: creation, work, economic empowerment, and international connection. But a compass only works if you know where you're standing. Which brings me again to where I started, to this room. By now you have understood that I am very direct. The workers that I've been describing today do not have many powerful rooms on their side. This one should be one of them. This committee represents employers, workers, and civil society. In the context of cultural policy, this is essential. So I'm coming forward, I'm making a specific proposal. I will propose that the European Economic and Social Committee joins the European Committee of the Regions in a formal governance role for the European Heritage Label and the European Capitals of Culture Initiative, legally. Because the workers in this sector need advocates on their side, in a room where decisions are being made. And you are those advocates. I am also proposing that young people hold formal governance roles in these initiatives. If young people do not see themselves shaping culture, they will not see themselves in Europe. These are structural choices, and I am asking you to hold me to them. Honourable members, the 8-hour working day was won through songs and marches, through pamphlets that have been passed from hand to hand, through theatre that made the invisible visible, through solidarity rituals that carried the memory of struggle from one generation to the next. The workers' movement has always been a cultural movement. To speak about workers tomorrow without speaking of cultural workers is to forget the DNA of the very tradition that we honor. So tomorrow, when we celebrate Workers' Day, let us celebrate that woman composing music on the train. Let us celebrate that costume designer who has worked 3 jobs this month, that heritage worker that is keeping the places that we cherish alive, that would otherwise disappear, that festival organizer that is running thousands of events across Europe, because these are the workers that build Europe, that Europe depends on. And it is now our time to reflect this in policy. I look forward to the joint declaration on the Culture Compass sending a clear signal of our shared ambition on this, and I hope that in due course, after the co-legislators agree on it, institutions like the EESC will endorse it. I look forward to building a budget case for Agora EU being the main program to finance cultural investments, to continue to be strengthened, but also for other funding programs to be directed towards cultural investments. A good example of such cultural investments include one which I've seen recently, which is the Biblioteca Europea di Informazione e Cultura in Milan. This is a significant investment of over 100 million euro coming from European funding from the Resilience and Recovery Plan, which is helping what will become the largest cultural and knowledge infrastructure in Europe. This is the kind of strategic investment that shows what is possible when culture is not confined to just one budget line. And finally, I look forward to the day when the culture compass is something that worker on the last train home actually feels. Because when culture wins, workers win, and when workers win, Europe wins. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Commissioner, dear Glenn, and thank you for that very passionate and extraordinary and brilliant presentation. I'd like to bring in remotely a member from the MEP, Neela Riel, speaking from Strasbourg, I think, Chair of the Committee of Culture and Education. So I know you have to face votes shortly, but you have 4 minutes. Thank you for joining us. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, and sorry I couldn't be there in person. As he said, yeah, I'll be running in like 3 minutes, so I try to be very quickly. Thank you, Glenn, for the very good presentation of all the work you put into the Culture Compass, I think. Dear President, dear members of the European Committee on Economic and Social, of the European Economic and Social Committee, and also dear colleagues who are present today. It's a pleasure from my side to address you as the chair of the Cult Committee as this very, very important moment for culture and also for the future of the direction of the European cultural policy. I would like to begin by thanking the rapporteur and the Economic, Social Committee for the work on the Culture Compass and for giving civil society such an important place in this debate, because that is where it belongs. This is exactly where the discussion on culture should take place, not only among institutions, but also with artists, with workers, employers, cultural organizations, educators, young people, local communities, and just in general citizens. The Culture Compass comes at a crucial moment for Europe. We are living through a period of very rapid changes and unpredictability, marked by geopolitical instability, digital transformation, pressure on democratic values, rising costs, but also growing social fragmentation. In this context, culture is very often wrongly stated as something secondary, something nice to have, which it is of course not. But as a Committee on Culture and Education, I can assure you that culture is not secondary. Culture is a strategic part of Europe's future. Culture gives people a sense of belonging. It strengthens democracy and it protects freedom of expression. It brings generations and communities together. It supports education, innovation, social cohesion, and Europe's role in the world. And of course, it also is an important economic sector, creating jobs, skills, and add value across our societies. The Culture Compass rightly recognizes the broader role of culture. It places culture closer to the center of EU policymakers and gives us a clearer version of the culture and creative sectors. I would also like to share a few reflections on the draft opinion of the European Economic and Social Committee. First, I welcome the remarks by the rapporteur, as I said before, which rightly show that the Culture Compass is more than just a cultural strategy. It is also about democracy, social cohesion, regional development, competitiveness, and Europe's role in the world. This is a very, very important message. As I mentioned earlier, culture should not be seen as a separate or secondary sector. It should be seen as a cross-cutting force that strengthens our society and supports the European project. I also welcome the strong emphasis on cultural participation and freedom of artistic expression. This is very important for me, as these elements are essential for really democratic resilience. At a time when Europe is facing polarization, disinformation, and pressure on democratic values, I believe that more than ever, culture and education must be treated as an integral part of our democratic infrastructure. Cultural spaces are not only places for art and creativity, they are places where people come together, exchange ideas, and also build trust, after all. I also share the view put forward in this draft opinion that the Culture Compass can only succeed if it is built together with the cultural ecosystem. This means involving not only institutions, but also people, organizations, and working culture, civil society, local communities, but maybe even most importantly, also young people. And it should not happen only during consultations, but also throughout the entire implementation of the strategy. Lastly, I was very happy to see that the opinion strongly underlines the international dimension of the culture compass, as well as the need for more concrete action on the strategy for international cultural relations. This is also an important priority for the Parliament. Therefore, this opinion comes as a particularly important moment, as you may know, of negotiations between the three institutions on the joint declaration now approaching. For the European Parliament, this political statement will not be treated as a formality. We have a strong commitment to place culture at the heart of the European project. We have high ambitions for this joint declaration, and we will work to make it as ambitious and concrete and overarching as possible. In our view, the joint declaration should reflect the full role of culture in Europe. It should not limit culture to one narrow policy area, but recognize its links with democracy, education, digital transformation, social coherence, external actions, and the next long-term budget. It should also send a clear signal that culture needs long-term political support. The culture and creative sectors cannot rely only on short-term initiatives or fragmented funding. They need a stable framework, proper investment, and clear recognition across EU policies. The joint declaration is an opportunity to give the culture compass a real political weight. It is an opportunity for the three institutions to speak with one voice and to state clearly that culture matters for Europe's future. The Parliament will approach these negotiations with these ambitions to ensure that culture is not treated as an afterthought, but as a central part of Europe's democratic, social, and economic agenda. Thank you very much for having me online today.
Thank you, Nela. And just before you go, to acknowledge the work you do. We had the great pleasure of meeting in Strasbourg and a few months ago, and we'll do so again. So congratulations on your work in that area. Thank you.
Absolutely, I'd be delighted. Thank you. I wish you all a very fruitful conference. Bye.
Okay, we now go to Tanya Hristova, a member of the Committee of Regions, Vice Chair of the Commission on Social Policy, Education and Employment Research. I have to say we have tremendous relations with the Committee of Regions, so it's an honour to have you here. 4 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. It's really a great pleasure, dear President, dear Commissioner, dear members of the European Economic and Social Committee, to be together and to be engaged with this very important topic, positioning culture at the heart of our present and, I believe, our future. But before I go into my perspective of how important is culture for the local and regional authorities, I would like to let me thank your rapporteur, Mr. Avier, for his excellent work on the positioning culture from the perspective of the voices of the civil society, cultural actors, and also the communities, without which the culture could not have sustainable meaning and importance for our development. Your opinion is really very inspiring for me, but as a rapporteur from the Committee of the Region and also a mayor of Bulgarian municipality called Gabrovo, I invite all of you to visit my city. I would like and I would actually love to build on this topic, focusing on dimensions that I believe will ultimately determine whether the culture compass will succeed or not, because it is very important to have and to speak about the territorial grounding and the role, as I have mentioned, of the local and regional authorities. Dear Commissioner, thank you for strongly positioning and indicating how important culture is for our European perspective, and how important it is to have culture as a strategic component of our agenda, linking it to democracy, to cohesion, and of course to the hottest topic today, competitiveness. But you know, strategy, nevertheless, how nicely written or elaborated it is only meaningful, it can really take roots. And we know that culture has the nature to be rooted, and it is rooted in our places, in our cities and regions, in cultural institutions, public spaces, and of course in the everyday reactions and interactions between citizens, creators and our communities. Therefore, the first message that I would like to convey is the importance of the territorial dimension, which is something like I believe will be taken as a condition of credibility. Because we on local levels and also on regional, we are the custodians of our cultural infrastructure. We facilitate and we create our cultural ecosystems. We support the organizations, and we also very often are the investors in culture, and sometimes we are the only one. In this hand and in this regards, it should be clearly understood that local and regional authorities are not simply intermediaries. We are structural actors of the European cultural policy, and from this perspective, I believe culture must be understood not as a sector, but as a form of a democratic, social and territorial infrastructure. Because on local level, culture is the area that provides for dialogue, that can enhance the trust in us, and also culture is engaged with social cohesion and civil engagement. Today we see that culture could be very instrumental for addressing the biggest challenges like health issues, like the well-being and the sustainable development of our territories, something that in my city we are very much engaged to do. And it is, as it has already been mentioned, very instrumental to empower and to engage the next generation of Europe. Because in our libraries, in our community centers, when we organize a festival or we take care of a heritage site, it is not just a set of cultural assets. These are places where society can hold together, where people can reconnect, and where we can experience the tangible aspects of our Europe and of our being united and live for the sustainable development of our territories. And this leads me to my next point, and it is that access to culture is essential, but it is not already sufficient. What we need is also stronger focus on participation and on emphasis of the cultural rights and co-creations. Therefore, we must create opportunities for citizens to be not only consumers, but to be part of this co-creating process where culture could be really a very bonding component. And in this regard, just two more messages and I will finish. We have to consider culture not as a stand-alone sector. It should be considered as something that is transversal, and we have to ensure that it is really instrumental for our strategic development. In this regard, here we have to consider changing our perspective when we think of governance and funding, and here funding the very important component. If we don't see culture as structurally embedded across EU funding, and especially concerning the cohesion component, maybe the culture compass will remain just a good strategic vision, but will not become a real transformation. And we have to take care of cultural financial tools to be accessible to bigger, to smaller, and to those that are vulnerable, and also to engage with long-term development. And I will finish with something that I believe will be very much at the heart of our joint efforts for positioning culture at the heart of our activities. It is the fact that we really need to ensure genuine multi-level governance and engage local and regional authorities in the whole cycle of this policy as a strategic element. And I think Committee of the Region is a very good platform to be a partner in this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya, and well done in that presentation. And as I said, from the Committee of Regions, who we hold highly in esteem. Now I go to Lars Ebert, Secretary General, Culture Action Europe. Again, the floor is yours for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation, and also to the rapporteur for brilliant work of the draft opinion that we support. The Culture Compass matters for many different reasons, as outlined by previous speakers. However, for us, it matters because civil society helped shape it and co-create it. Culture Action Europe contributed through our discussion paper towards the Culture Compass, a sector blueprint, developed with 30 of our transnational cultural network members from across sectors. We feel ownership of this strategy, and that's why we want to see the joint declaration signed promptly by the EU institutions. Culture Action Europe welcomes the intentions of the European Economic and Social Committee and the Committee of the Regions to endorse it. The Compass sends a strong political sign. Whether it becomes more than a signal, as mentioned by my previous speaker, depends, amongst others, on funding. We strongly support the EESC's call to allocate 2% of the EU budget to culture, a demand Culture Action Europe has set out in various campaigns, in our Ask Pay Trust campaign, but also in the Cultural Deal for Europe campaign, which we run together with Europa Nostra. That figure means a strong Agora EU program with an autonomous, visible Creative Europe culture strand, earmarked at a level of 25%. It also means integrating structural components for culture across Horizon Europe, the European Competitiveness Fund, Global Europe, and national and regional partnership plans. We are glad to see this recognized in today's opinion. For us, the Compass is a civil society document, not only the Commission's. That is why we have selected several flagship actions to help implement them and set up 4 action groups at Culture Action Europe. On AI, on working conditions, so I was very glad with your introduction, Glenn, because working conditions is at the heart of what we focus on artistic freedom, of course, and international cultural relations. Together with our members, we have already drafted our recommendations on the AI strategy for the cultural and creative sectors, which we will submit to the institutions by the end of spring. Culture Action Europe is also working on the contribution to the EU Artists Charter, and we welcome the EESC's reaffirmation of social conditionality in the draft opinion. We will also be feeding into the international cultural relations strategy. Now to artistic freedom. We welcome the proposal to monitor it through the State of Culture report, but we hope that it will be the first step towards an Artistic Freedom Act. The cultural sector needs legally binding protection. Culture Action Europe is part of the Artistic Freedom Act steering group that works on the draft act, and we hope the EU institutions will match this ambition. Beyond sectoral action, we attach great importance to structured dialogue. Civil society should co-create policies with decision makers and not just be consulted. Structured dialogue must be transparent, inclusive in its invitation policy, and regular. The Compass sets the direction for the next 3 years. Flagship actions may end with the start of the new MFF and the 2029 European elections, which means the work we begin now will be inherited by a different parliament and a different political momentum. So even as we implement the Compass now, we should be thinking past 2029, how culture enters European political manifestos, for instance, and whether the Union's limited competence on culture is still adequate to what we are asking culture to do. Culture Action Europe is starting that conversation in line with our strategic focus beyond that you may know. In autumn, we will publish our second State of Culture report, which, as we hope, will provide complementary analysis of the situation. A compass only matters if you actually start walking. So let's walk, and let's walk together.
Thank you very much. Really good presentation, and thanks for that. And now, Luca Jair, former president, of course, of the EESC, and as was well being noted in terms of culture, you have 4 minutes as rapporteur of this opinion. The floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Seamus. Dear Commissioner Mikalev, dear President Riehl, dear Vice President Ristova, dear Lars, dear colleagues. Let me be very direct. If Europe is serious about its future, it must be serious about culture. Because culture is not peripheral, it is what holds together our democracies, our societies, and ultimately our union. We welcome the Culture Compass, a step in the right direction long overdue. But let us also be honest, Europe has too often treated culture as an accessory policy, not a strategic one. That must change now. First, culture is a matter of democratic scrutiny. In an age of disinformation, polarization, and external interference, culture is not decoration, it is protection. It builds critical thinking, it creates belonging and strengthens cohesion, it sustains free and open societies. So let us stop thinking of culture as soft policy. Culture is hard power, is a vector for democracy, so must be integrated into our core instrument. Second, no ambition without resources. Let me be equally clear, without money there is no strategy, there are only intentions. Today we speak about cultural importance, but we do not fund it accordingly. This is why we propose a clear political commitment, 2% of the next EU budget dedicated to culture as an horizontal target, and also dedicated financial windows in the heading 2 of the next MFF, and mobilising ACB and the AF, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a recognition of a sector that employs millions, drives innovation, and shapes Europe's global influence. Third, protect creators and artists in the age of AI. We are entering in a decisive moment, as you, Commissioner, said. Generative AI is transforming creation itself. If we do nothing, we risk a system where European culture feeds the machine, but creators are left behind. This is unacceptable, so we need a real European market for cultural data licensing, strong protection of intellectual property, and fair remuneration for creators, artists, and who works in the cultural sector. So Europe must not only regulate technology, it must defend those who create meanings. And we also strongly support an EU Artist Charter and strengthening skills and cultural education. Fourth, fix the joint declaration. Now let me address a critical issue. The joint declaration, as it stands, is not at the level of the ambition of the compass. The absence of the international dimension in the joint declaration is a serious mistake. At a time of war on our continent, at a time of enlargement, at a time when Europe must speak to the world, how can culture be missing from our external vision? This must be corrected fully and clearly. And there is more. Culture cannot be owned by 3 institutions alone. I have heard you, Commissioner, and I hope that the endorsement will be broadening to this committee, to the Committee of the Region, and to the cultural stakeholders across Europe, because without ownership there is no impact. Fifth, from consultation to co-creation. Finally, participation. We do not need occasional dialogue. We need permanent co-creation. This is why we call for a fully fledged European cultural platform, a structured, continuous space where institutions, creators, civil society and economic actors shape policy together. Dear colleagues, this is the moment of choice. We can continue to speak about culture, or we can finally act on culture. Because in the end, the question is simple. What kind of Europe do we want? A Europe that manages crisis, or a Europe that inspires, connects and leads? Culture is not a niche, is the answer to that question. Is Europe's strength? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca. Thank you. We now open the debate to the floor, and we are looking at Laura Albu, sitting at seat 19. To open it, you have, I think it's 1 minute. I'm not sure. The floor is yours.
I negotiated 2 minutes. Thank you. A culture compass for Europe maps the terrain of European cultural landscape, where we detect 3 deep-seated structural gaps which don't seem intergenerational or fair, and I'm very glad that Commissioner Mikalev mentioned her in his speech about cultural workers. First is precarity gap. Culture in Europe is powered by the gig economy, where women often face the instability of freelance work, alongside the unequal burden of unpaid care. We cannot talk about the status of the artist without talking about social security, maternity rights, and childcare. Artistic freedom is luxury if you cannot afford a pension. Second, safety gap. Me Too movement was not a trend, it was a revelation of systemic power imbalances. A European cultural compass must point towards a zero tolerance for gender-based violence and harassment. Cultural institutions receiving public funds must be the gold standard for safety and integrity. We want a culture that challenges stereotypes, not only that relies on them to maintain power. And the third, funding and meritocracy gap. The data is clear. Work by female artists is frequently priced lower, curated less, and awarded fewer grants. If our funding mechanisms remain gender-blind, they will remain biased. We need gender disaggregated data and transparent criteria to ensure that European talent is rewarded based on brilliance. In Group Third, we believe that culture is the soul of our democracy. With an incomplete soul, our European project color will be grey. Please ensure that this compass doesn't just point north, but points toward equity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and well done. Great 2 minutes, by the way. And now I go to Renato Mattioni, sitting in 204, and you have 2 minutes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I would to speak in Italian, if it's possible. Sentendo l'intervento del commissario mi viene in mente la storia raccontata da Wallace dei 2 pesci giovani che nuotano insieme e incontrano un pesce anziano. E il pesce anziano dice: com'è l'acqua? E i 2 pesci giovani si guardano: ma cos'è l'acqua? Ecco, probabilmente la cultura, il senso della cultura è come l'acqua, ci viviamo dentro, la respiriamo, chiede contesto e direzione. Sarò brevissimo parlando di senso. Primo, il senso del lavoro, complimenti al relatore, un ottimo lavoro ai colleghi, è stato fatto una bella esperienza per questo importante testo. Secondo senso, il senso dell'impresa e il senso del lavoro. Io sottolineo l'importanza delle imprese, degli imprenditori, dei giovani imprenditori, delle donne imprenditrici nel mondo della cultura e delle imprese creative. Vanno sostenute. Inoltre va aggiunta la stretta connessione tra la cultura e il turismo. Cultura e turismo valgono 18 milioni di lavoratori in Europa e quasi il 10% del PIL europeo. Chiudo infine con l'ultimo senso, che è il senso dell'Europa per la cultura, che sarebbe, noi l'abbiamo fatto in Italia. Probabilmente recuperare il senso della cultura rappresenta un ripensamento dei dati statistici, mettendo dentro non soltanto l'export e il made in, ma anche il know-how e il savoir-faire, per le attività di manufatturiere, ma anche quelle turistiche e culturali. Grazie.
Thank you very much, and well done on the time as well. I'd like now to call on Jean-Paul Decroix, sitting at 118. You have 2 minutes as well. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I will speak in French. Donc, parler de la boussole pour la culture en 2 minutes, c'est un sacré défi et un luxe pour cette première intervention pour moi en plénière. Donc déjà, merci pour votre indulgence. Je voudrais débuter par pourquoi pas, par une citation d'Albert Camus, qui illustre parfaitement le thème qui nous réunit ce midi. Je cite: « Tout ce qui dégrade la culture raccourcit les chemins qui mènent à la servitude. » À méditer. Merci pour le débat passionnant qui a précédé, débat engagé, et pour la présentation qui a été faite par le rapporteur, que je salue pour le travail magistral qu'il a effectué avec son experte et l'ensemble des membres du groupe d'études. Une boussole qui nous indique une seule direction, qui nous rassemble. Nos 3 groupes confondus, contrairement à d'autres boussoles, il faut le souligner. Donc c'est très symbolique de clôturer cette plénière par cette question. J'appuie à titre personnel tous les accents stratégiques qui ont été présentés, et en particulier ceux sur l'IA et la préservation de la liberté de la création. Le thème de la culture n'est effectivement pas un thème secondaire. Comme il a été dit, il est au cœur même de la défense et de la promotion des valeurs démocratiques de l'Union. Riche de sa diversité, de sa multicularité, de son histoire et de son ouverture sur le monde. 3 dimensions que je voudrais mettre en exergue dans cette courte présentation. 1, la reconnaissance du rôle de la culture dans le renforcement de la cohésion sociale, ça a déjà été dit, dans le renforcement de l'engagement démocratique, la lutte contre l'autoritarisme et comme une réponse à la polarisation de la société. 2, l'importance d'un futur cadre financier européen qui intègre totalement la place de la culture sur les plans européens, nationaux, régionaux, locaux, en lien avec le niveau international. Et qui ne réduisent pas la culture à une variable d'ajustement budgétaire, mais permettent de développer au contraire des outils et infrastructures qui favorisent un accès égalitaire à tous et toutes, comme les bibliothèques et médiathèques par exemple. Ça a été dit par le commissaire. 3e et dernièrement, le rôle non négligeable de ce secteur économique qui a déjà été rappelé plusieurs fois. Donc la vie nécessite, sur la nécessité de pourvoir aux entreprises un environnement sûr, c'est important pour les PME actives dans ce secteur, mais aussi de pourvoir aux travailleurs, quel que soit leur statut, des conditions de travail de qualité, une protection sociale qui sécurise les emplois. Je terminerai avec un souhait. Osons, comme il a été dit, osons faire de cette boussole un instrument ambitieux qui encourage et renforce la culture à tous les niveaux, européen, national, régional, local, et pour un meilleur vivre ensemble. Construisons des ponts, pas des murs. Merci.
Thank you, Jean-Paul, and I hope you have many more contributions. Congratulations and well done. I would like to go to Zunitsa Rusinova, sitting at 294. Again, you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, dear President, and congratulations to all the panelists. The success of the Culture Compass will depend on inclusive multi-level governance. That's why civil society, local actors, cultural sectors, and youth organizations must be fully involved. We see culture as a democratic force. It strengthens cultural critical thinking. It helps countering disinformation and reinforces social cohesion. Linking culture with education, skills and innovation ensures that young people are equipped to contribute to the European culture and creative future. That's why, as a National Council, we have centered our efforts to working with young people and to doing a lot of initiatives, even together with the European Economic and Social Committee, to fight disinformation. We can see in Bulgaria very good examples, as Tanya Hristova, the mayor of Gabrovo, mentioned, culture as a way to reach sustainability, and also culture as a good social inclusion mechanism to fight poverty. I would also emphasize that we Europeans draw from our diversity. Our mix of cultures and traditions fuels a rich, pluralistic artistic voice that must remain free. That's why it's very important to keep and to all protect artists from censorships and to share our common principles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anista. Well done. Giulio Barbucci, sitting at 52. The floor is yours for 2 minutes as well.
Grazie Presidente. Innanzitutto vorrei ringraziare la Commissione europea per la comunicazione sulla bussola culturale per l'Europa che sosteniamo con convinzione e ovviamente il relatore Jaillet che ha fatto un eccellente lavoro. Questo parere arriva in un momento complesso ma estremamente importante per riaffermare il ruolo della cultura e del servizio pubblico culturale come pilastri essenziali della democrazia europea. Oggi viviamo in un contesto segnato da crisi economiche e sociali, tensioni geopolitiche e da una crescente diffusione di narrazioni divisive e autoritarie. In questo scenario la cultura non può essere considerata un elemento accessorio. Essa rappresenta invece uno spazio fondamentale di libertà, partecipazione democratica, dialogo e inclusione sociale. La politica culturale e il servizio pubblico culturale svolgono quindi una funzione cruciale nel rafforzare la coesione sociale e nel promuovere uno sviluppo sostenibile che metta realmente al centro le persone, i loro diritti e il pieno godimento delle libertà fondamentali. La cultura contribuisce anche alla costruzione di una cittadinanza europea consapevole, capace di contrastare odio, discriminazione e disinformazione. Per questo motivo è essenziale ricordare che la cultura non è una merce. Dietro il settore culturale e creativo ci sono lavoratori e lavoratrici che troppo spesso vivono condizioni di precarietà, bassi salari e insufficiente sicurezza lavorativa a causa della natura non standard di molti rapporti di lavoro artistici e culturali, come ci ha anche ricordato il Commissario. Quindi consideriamo particolarmente importante la proposta di una Carta degli artisti europei che possa garantire condizioni di lavoro dignitose, accesso effettivo alla protezione sociale, mobilità equi e il pieno riconoscimento del valore sociale ed economico del lavoro culturale e creativo. Grazie.
Grazie, Giulia. Giulia is, of course, for new members, a former Vice President of the Committee, so well done on your presentation. And finally, for 1 minute, Agnes Scher, the floor is yours.
Köszönöm, elnök úr. Szeretném felmutatni, hogy éppen 20 éve fogadta el a bizottságunk a kultúrák közötti párbeszéd évéről szóló. Éppen 20 éve, hogy a testületünk elfogadta a kultúrák közötti európai évről szóló, párbeszédről szóló véleményt. Sajnálom, hogy ez kimaradt a mellékletből, mert fontos üzenetet tartalmaz. Egyrészt, hogy hozzunk létre közösségi rádiót, médiát, hogy mindenhová eljussunk, illetve az európai kultúrák kézikönyvét, hogy megismerjük egymásnak nem csak a klasszikus kultúráját, hanem a szakmai kultúrákat is. Kedves Lars, köszönöm a vitairatodat, amit Szöulban mondtál el. Ahhoz, hogy eljussunk az aktív választójogtól a passzívhoz, ahhoz meg kell teremtenünk, hogy mindenki az anyanyelvén tudja, ismerje a jogait és a lehetőségeit, így tudunk közösen fejlődni. Köszönöm.
Thank you very much, Agnes, and that's an extraordinary statement of our commitment in terms of culture. Now, Luca, you will respond. 4 minutes, I think, should be okay. 4 minutes. I had a great meeting with, by the way, your delegation, all the Italian delegations, and the Irish and the Italians have the great joke. If you allow Italians 1 minute, that means 10, so it's dangerous, you know. You said it yourself.
The color inverted, so let's...
You've 1 minute. Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you, President. Three things. First, I wish really to thank all the people that have contributed to this work, to this opinion, and also my expert. She's not here, Catherine Haid. She was already a member of my cabinet, and she's also a strong colleague of Lars in Culture Action Europe. So thank you to her and to you all. Second, I really wish to thank the Commissioner for his strong proposal. I have heard your proposal to be included in some core governance of the implementation. So if it would be for me, but I am no one in this committee today, I would say yes immediately. So I do hope that the President and the Bureau of this House in this democratic process will analyze and will have the opportunity to agree and to involve in your strong proposal. But the third conclusion is more important. I was positively very much astonished of you accomplishing, Commissioner, this compass. That is not a normal strategy, because I know how the Commission works today, what are the priorities, and this is a little bit a different focus to put a strategy. But this is not the end. This is the starting point. And we know that after you have put this compass, that is a new strategic horizontal frame for politics, now you have to do action. And it will not be an easy walk for you. So we should engage close to you to support, to achieve the result. Because any of the flagship, speaking about the artistic chart, the AI regulation, speaking about a fully fledged action plan for international cultural relations, and so on, will be a very complicated travel, and we should engage concretely at your side, close to you, to allow you to achieve the result. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca. And the only thing I'll say to you, Luca, is you're very lucky that this President has as his mandate greater cooperation between all of the institutions, so you might be on a winner there. So that's great. Thank you for that. So we would like to now finish off in terms of responses. As you know, we kind of go in reverse order. So I would like to ask Lars Ebert, and you have, so did I get this right? You have 2 minutes.
I think it was 4.
2 minutes.
First of all, I want to full-heartedly second Luca. We are impressed by the compass, and we stand ready as a sector to support it. And although we are asking time and again, as many here, for more money, I think the main support that this strategy needs to be implemented is political support. And we hope and we will push that institutions like this, but also your fellow commissioners and the president of the college will support it so that there's political momentum behind it as well. As to the comments, I was very glad that the fish in the water metaphor was mentioned. And I think we are all often fish in the water, but I remember that in the pandemic we weren't fish in the water. We were very, very aware of what culture does. And I think this is an awareness we need to keep fostering. And I'm wondering if the very positive notion of culture as a vector that is in the opinion must not always be accompanied by the notion of a sector. There is no vector if there's not a strong sector. I think we need to start thinking more in terms of a cultural infrastructure that is a foundational principle of our societies, just like high-speed internet is or healthcare. And that this infrastructure is the basis for our collective meaning-making. This is the only infrastructure that assures collective meaning-making of our societies. And collective meaning-making is the only instrument we have to support our democracies, because that generates images, that's the imagination of culture, images of a better future that enables me to be a responsible democratic agent, to act, not only to vote and follow. On the international cultural relations strategy, I'm glad that intercultural dialogue was mentioned. I think cultural rights, the notion of cultural rights and cultural democracy is important. And if we have a rights-based and values-based approach in Europe, open to the world, then we have to be radically open and balance power asymmetries. And for that, I hope the international cultural relations strategy will be paramount, and we will work to push for that. My time is over, so I'm swallowing all the other comments, and thank you for the time that I had.
And I would like to thank you very much. I'd like to thank you personally very much because your commitment in this area is incredible. So thank you for being here. And now for 2 minutes, Tanya Hristova from the Committee of Regions. The time is yours.
Thank you. I will try to be much briefer than 2 minutes because I oversized my first intervention. But first of all, I'm really grateful for the richness of the debate and the thoughtful contribution that came from all of you here in the European Economic and Social Committee, because it really shows that culture is no longer something that is seen as a marginal policy. It is something very strategic and very important for our territories, for our cities, for our regions, and for our European sustainable future. We have heard today confirms about this consensus that culture matters for our democracy, for our social cohesion, for our economic vitality, and of course for our shared identity. And if I may allow myself to give a recommendation and a firm belief as coming from the local perspective, I think that the European cultural compass will succeed not only when it speaks about the future of Europe, but it will be really successful. It allows to work about European democracy together with our cities, with our regions, and of course with our communities, which means that we are reaching the moment when discussion should be transformed into actions, because delivery is something that really matters. And in this regard, I think, dear Commissioner, from the Committee of the Regions and I believe from the European Economic and Social Committee, we are part of the process that I believe will be at the end successful.
Thank you. And just to give you a plug, your city's name again, so that we can all go.
It is a little bit difficult to pronounce, Gabrovo, but you will remember my city if I tell you that the famous artist Christo was born in my city, and currently, thanks to the cohesion solidarity, we are working on a very big cultural project that will create a contemporary art center, a lively hub that will attract artists from across Europe and the globe. So that's the way you will remember my city.
And now to my good friend Glenn, dear Commissioner, you have 3 minutes.
I promise I will stick to it. So, the compass is only pointing in one direction. The compass is pointing towards Europe, and the Europe and the European project is built on people. I want to tell you that this is not my compass. This is our compass. It was designed this way, by the way, Luca. When we started the process to design this compass, everyone thought that we were maybe losing our minds a little bit, because I was constantly pushing for more ambition and for more initiatives. It was shaped with stakeholders, it was shaped with institutions, it was shaped and built by consultations, and that's the way I intend to implement it. This compass will be implemented in the same way it was designed. That's how we will deliver it. But as you say, the real work starts now. And there are a few points which I would like to touch upon from the interventions, starting with funding, because like every good strategy needs resources to be implemented. You are right, you are correct in this. The proposal for Agora-EU with a stronger budget for culture is just the starting point. We need culture to be able to be financed from different funding instruments. We will not do it alone. We will need regions, we will need other programs to support these investments. In the proposals for the national regional partnership plans, in the proposals for Horizon Europe, there are possibilities to fund cultural investments. But that depends also on conscious choices being made when these programs are being implemented. Like the conscious choice taken by the city of Milan to dedicate 100 million euro to build the largest cultural investment being built right now, like the one that Tanya was just mentioning, from cohesion funds to be dedicated to culture. And that requires that we work with institutions like the Committee of the Regions to make this dream, this vision that we have to reach 2%, I say, possibly even more, a reality. So this is the first thing. Then, on the issues related to workers' rights, I will not be able to do it alone. I need help and I need support. But one thing that I will always do is to try and lead by example. And this is why I propose, and if I get my way, under my watch, there will be no funding from the cultural budget going to any project that doesn't treat the workers well. This is a conditionality that we've put in the legislation, black on white, and I am strong and I make no apologies for this. This is for me crucial. The relation between culture and tourism was mentioned. I completely agree. Most of the people who come to Europe come to experience Europe, and this is experiencing culture. And then, as I said, the way we implement this is the way we designed it. I want young people to have not just an advisory role in this. I'm fed up of young people being given advisory roles. Young people need to be given a seat, a voice at the table, and a vote. And this is what I intend to do in the proposals, in the legal proposals, in the governance of the flagship initiatives. You will see some of them coming soon and before the summer. And in the same way, work with institutions, with the Committee of the Regions, with advisory bodies like this one, with a formal role in governance.
Thank you very much, and that is a great pleasure to hear many of the last two statements, Commissioner. You are indeed clear and very demonstrative. As I have said, I take away from a number of things. As Luca Jair, Culture Compass is a bold ambition, but it has strong potential to place culture at the heart of Europe. And as you know, placing civil society at the heart of Europe is hard work, so is this. From this debate, we take a few notes, like first, ambition requires resources, and I think, Commissioner, you have dealt very strongly with that view. So the next multi-annual financial framework will have to reflect this, as far as we are concerned, because in order to bring your dream of making sure people are looked after in these fundings, it does require resources. Second, placing culture at the heart of EU policy making, as I've said, is about integrating key agendas such as skills, competitiveness and digital. And third, relevant actors must be involved, and indeed you've said that very well. We welcome the proposed EU structured dialogue with cultural stakeholders. We want to be very clearly involved, as my colleague Luca has said, and we believe that the future of culture and its development and its inspiration of new Europe has to be integral to all other parts of those building blocks of a new Europe that we are talking about. So well done and congratulations. We've still a little bit of work for you to do, so don't rush away. But before we do, we better adopt the opinion which is presented to us by Luca Jair, SOC 853, A Cultural Compass for Europe. So I am now declaring the vote is open.
Can I vote?
We're coming close to a declaration. I'm now about to declare. Come on, where? Anyone asleep? No. Right, it's now declared closed, and we now look at the result. Yes, 163, abstention 1. And I'm assured by the Commissioner the abstention was not his. It's okay. So look, quickly, I want you to hold on because we have a little job for the Commissioner as well. I want to conclude this debate on the Cultural Compass, but before saying goodbye to you, Commissioner McAuliffe, we would like to take a moment to hand over to you the conclusions of Your Europe, Your Say, our YES programme. This year, the event brought over 100 young people from EU member states. I've said this before, it was one of the most enthusiastic, inspirational events, I have to say, I attended, similar to a group of young people in Moldova last week. These were EU member states, candidate countries, the UK, to discuss issues that matter to young people. And, you know, they are the future leaders, and you could see it really represented here. So these are very important conclusions. So I'd like to ask our Vice President, Maria Hanzavacci, and the President of the Youth Group, Nicoletta Merlo, is somewhere here, to join myself and the Commissioner in front of the podium out here so that we can celebrate the handover of these conclusions to you. So everybody hold, because this is quite an honour to be able to do this. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And again, I really enjoyed that debate. Thank you, Luca, and thanks to everybody who participated. It's very exciting. And, you know, the real takeaway point is, Europe has had a huge tradition of culture, of architecture, of so much tradition and so much. You see it everywhere, no matter what city or town you go to. Yes, of course, we leave Greece and Italy fighting over as to which is the greatest cultural contribution. But Ireland has contributed, and so has every other single member of the country of Europe. So we must hold on to that tradition. It is what is unique to Europe. So I am so pleased that we've had that debate. Quickly, we have done the decisions to be taken by the Assembly, which is number 29, and coming to any other business. I don't think there is any other business, so on that basis, we announced the date of the next plenary. The next plenary session takes place on Wednesday and Thursday, the 17th and 18th of June, 2026, in the Gasperi Room, Charlemagne Building, of the European Commission in Brussels. The session is set to open the 17th of June, as usual, at 14:30, 100 hours, and it will resume on the 18th at 9 o'clock. Again, just to say, we've had a fantastic plenary. We've had commissioners. We've had President Costa. I've lost count of the many brilliant opinions that were brought before us. We have brought fantastic opinions before it. We have, as a committee, very clearly, and it was fantastic to look and listen to the various compliments by across Europe, by other commissioners, by other MEPs. We are an important part, and that's why civil society should be at the heart of Europe. We want to be at that heart as well. You, as members, new and old, have really contributed and are contributing on a daily basis in your opinions and in your work. And I can't say enough how much I admire the work you are doing. Please keep it up, and please congratulate yourselves. Can I also thank, as I always do, the administration staff led by Isabel, the interpreters, the registry who thought of the food yesterday evening, which was very valuable. Thank you very much. And all of the technicians here sitting in front of me. I mean, Glenn McAuliffe is very correct. We sometimes forget the people who really do the work, and we should never do that. And this is a time to remind. And please give all of them a good round of applause, and include yourselves as well. And try and enjoy the summer. We will still be in summer when we come back. Thank you very much. Good evening.